Nancy.
Hello, Andrea.
Hello, Nancy. We're going to begin the stream in a second. I just want to make sure that Marta can share her screen. I've just added her as a presenter. We want to make sure that that works before we start the live stream.
Okay. No worries. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Good. Sorry, my AirPods are playing tricks on me, so okay, perfect.
Marta, can you hear us? Do you want to try to share your screen?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm just trying to see. It looks like I have access now, but I'm just trying to share the screen. Let me see what I can do.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Can everybody see the screen?
Yep, it's there.
Yes, it works, Marta.
Okay, thank you, Andrea.
Yep. Marta, are you good for the land acknowledgement, or do you want me to share my screen for that?
Yeah, I don't have that, Andrea.
Okay, so I'll start it, and then you can start sharing your screen after we finish the land acknowledgement, okay?
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, Nancy, I'm just gonna walk over to go start the stream, and I'll type in the chat when you can start.
Thanks, Andrea. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Policy Committee of the Halton Catholic District School Board for May 11th, 2021. We are streaming virtually this evening on Teams. We'll begin this evening with an opening prayer. Trustee Tomasi, could I ask you to lead us in our opening prayer?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Please join me in the sign of our everlasting sign of our faith in the name of the Father, of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. My prayer tonight consists of the reaffirmation and reminder to each of us the meaning of the cross. The sign of the cross finds its roots in the earliest centuries of the church and is used today by over 1.3 billion Christians worldwide. But it's all easy to make the sign in a routine and superficial way, and the beginning and the end of each prayer, failing to observe its true significance. Bear with me here. Technical difficulties. The purpose of the sign of the cross is to recover the power of the ancient prayer. Pope Francis reminds us that the sign of the cross is a prayer in itself and one that bears great spiritual power. This simple but profound gesture, the Holy Father affirms, opens us to God, renews our baptism, and acts as a mark of Christian discipleship, inclusion, one that repels the devil and helps us to resist our self-indulgence and tendency towards sin. In closing, please join me in a renewed sign of our faith in the name of the Father, of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Trustee Ian Tomasi. I forgot to mention that this meeting will be available on the board's YouTube website, our YouTube channel, and it's live streaming currently. Moving on to item 2.1, approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Trustee Agnew.
Moved by Trustee Agnew, seconded by
O'Brien.
Trustee O'Brien. Thank you. We'll now take a recorded vote. Trustee Agnew?
Oh, I have a point of order.
I'm sorry?
I have a point of order. I have my hand up in the chat bar.
Can you state your point of order?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm just asking for a point of order, point of clarification regarding item 4.3, the delegation. Would like to know how this was brought forward so that we can all benefit from knowing the process of bringing the policy forward that already has amendments in it to the policy committee as an action item, and it's out of the regular cycle and without prior being a discussion item. So I'd just like to know the process.
Okay, so that's not a point of order. However, I can answer the process. If you look at the last policy meeting, it was on the upcoming agenda items. So that's per our normal practice, which is any trustee, as you're aware, I think you yourself have taken advantage of this process as well, Trustee Carabella, where if you'd like to bring something forward, it's brought forward. You give notice, it goes in as an information item, as an upcoming agenda item, and then it comes on as an action item with the approved or with the recommended changes. Any trustee can do that at any time, and that's what has happened here. Similarly, with other policies that have been brought forward, like the bullying and prevention policy, you and I had brought that forward as well as an action item off of cycle. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. So moving on to, I apologize. Ms. Swindon, do we want to do the land acknowledgement? I apologize.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, so I'm going to hold off on the approval of the agenda and we will do the land acknowledgement. My apologies.
Each of us has a relationship to the natural environment.
the land, water, earth, the habitat, and ecosystems. Land acknowledgements provide us with an opportunity to offer recognition, respect to the original inhabitants of the regions that we live in and work on. There are many things that we can do to go beyond simply reading a land acknowledgement script. To make it more meaningful, we need to consider that we are in fact acknowledging not only the ancestral lands, but also the historical and complex intersections of settler impacts on Indigenous histories, economies, ecologies, livelihood, well-being, and governance structures. A territorial acknowledgement is not an endpoint in the journey of reconciliation. Actions create conditions for true reconciliation and create a foundation for restoring, renewing, or developing a new relationship with Indigenous peoples. For hundreds of years, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Attawaddaron, the Potawatomi, the Wendat, and Lenape nations have sought to walk gently on this land. They assisted the first European travelers to this territory and shared their knowledge for survival in what was, at times, a harsh climate. Under consultations from elders, knowledge holders from the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and 6 nations of the Grand River Territory, the Indigenous Education Advisory Committee, along with Halton Catholic District School Board, created this land acknowledgement.
Halton, as we know it today,
is rich in the history and modern traditions
of many First Nations and the Métis.
From the lands of the Anishinaabe
to the Attawaddaron,
the Haudenosaunee,
and the Métis. These lands surrounding the Great Lakes
are steeped in Indigenous history.
As we gather today
on these treaty lands,
our Catholic social teachings
call us in solidarity
with our Indigenous brothers and sisters
to honor and respect
the 4 directions: lands, waters, plants, animals, and ancestors that walked before us.
All these wonderful elements of creation exist,
gifted to us by our Creator God. We acknowledge and thank
the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation
for being stewards of this traditional territory.
Thank you for that. We'll just wait till the agenda's back up. So we were on approval of the agenda, item 2.1. I'll call for a recorded vote. Trustee Agnew.
In favor?
Trustee DeRosa?
in favor.
Trustee Duart?
In favor.
Trustee Antomasi?
I'm against, Madam Chair.
Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Murphy?
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien?
In favor.
Trustee O'Hearn-Chernotta?
In favor.
Trustee Kelly?
In favor.
Trustee Goubert?
In favor.
And I don't believe I saw Trustee Roshdi join. So the agenda passes. Moving on to item 2.2, approval of the minutes. Can I have someone move, please, to approve the minutes of the April 13th, 2021 policy meeting?
Trustee Agnew?
Moved by Trustee Agnew, seconded by?
I will second it.
Trustee O'Hearn-Chernotta, thank you. I'll move to a recorded vote. Trustee DeRosa?
I'm opposed.
Trustee Duart?
In favor.
Trustee Antomasi?
Opposed, Madam Chair.
Trustee Carabella?
I have to abstain.
Trustee Murphy?
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien?
In favor.
Trustee O'Hearn-Chernotta?
I'm in favor.
Trustee Kelly,
In favor.
Trustee Goobert.
In favor.
I'm also in favor. So the minutes pass. Item 3, declarations of conflict of interest. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 4, action items, 4.1. This is policy III-11, hiring and promotion policy, academic and non-academic personnel. Can I have someone please move that the policy committee recommends that policy III-11, hiring and promotion policy, academic and non-academic personnel be forwarded to the, sorry guys, so forwarded to the May 18th, 2021 regular board meeting for approval.
What?
Trustee Dewar moves, seconded by
Trustee Agnew?
Trustee Agnew. Superintendent O'Hara, are you on with us this evening?
Yes, I am, Madam Chair.
Okay, if you want to just, I believe this was just coming back because we've already reviewed this in regards to PPM 165, and I believe actually we were supposed to have this in place by March 31st. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, and good evening, everyone. As the report indicates, the Ministry of Education has been talking about revoking Reg 274 for some time, and those conversations have been happening for a few years. In the fall, there was an indication that that was going to happen, and a draft PPM 165 was issued. Unfortunately, it was in draft, and although we did go and take information to the policy committee back in November of 2020, at that time there wasn't a final PPM that had been issued. That PPM was issued in late February of 2021 with an expectation that boards would review their hiring and promotion policies and make any tweaks that were required by March the 31st, 2021. So in fact, staff have gone through our existing policy, and we have gone and made the tweaks that were necessary given the PPM. And again, the whole intention is to look at a fair and consistent, transparent policy and make sure that we have equal opportunities for all qualified employees and applicants to apply to our board, and not in any way restricting our management rights with respect to, our denominational rights with respect to Roman Catholic boards. So all of those are protected and not impacted by the PPM. One thing that the PPM does state and is in the policy is that anything that is in the collective agreement has to continue, and so parts of Reg 274 were negotiated in this past round at the central table, and so there are parts of the Reg 274, the old 274, that we still need to follow. But again, those things are required based on labor relations jurisprudence. So I'm happy to take trustees through the changes that we've made. If you'll maybe scroll up to that part of the report. So okay, so we're yeah, you need to scroll up, Marta. To the actual report. Sorry. Do you have with the struck out changes, Mara?
There it is.
So yeah, it's right here.
Yeah, thank you. Right. So as you can see, we have gone and referenced the hiring practices for teachers and occasional teachers. We put in language right out of the PPM, a fair and consistent, transparent policy. We've referenced the PPM here, and again, a general statement that talks about, you know, our intentions to develop a strong and diverse workforce that best represents the students and the communities in the Halton Catholic District School Board, as we recognize that we continue, the face of Halton continues to change, and that we need to go and hire staff that do reflect what our population looks like. Again, there's another reference to PPM 165. With respect to the references, we've included the Human Rights Code, Ontario Regulation 298, and the PPM. Again, we have gone and put in a statement indicating that we shall be looking at hiring staff from underrepresented groups, and that's something that we do through our recruitment strategies, where we attend job fairs throughout the province, and certainly we are looking at trying to hire again more and more teachers that do reflect the changing faces of Halton. Again, we do need to look at more than just an interview, and so we do look at qualifications. We have the ability to go and look at diversity, and certainly the PPM allows us to go and hire experienced teachers from other boards, which was restricted in the past. And again, we are looking at making sure that we are hiring, we recognize that teachers and the quality of their teaching is the single most important factor in the improvement of student achievement. With respect to requirements, again, we have put in some requirements that are specific in the PPM as listed there. Keep scrolling, please. This statement, the Director of Education or designate shall ensure, while that is struck out, what we've really done is just move that to the responsibilities section, because we think that's where it should be. And if you can scroll down, I think that's the extent of the changes. So certainly happy to answer any questions that trustees may have.
Thank you. We've got some questions up in the queue. Trustee Duart, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, question to Superintendent O'Hara. I'm looking at under principles, the item which you just explained. The Halton Catholic District School Board shall promote the hiring of staff from underrepresented groups. And you mentioned in Halton we have groups that are underrepresented. How do you plan to implement this? We have been talking about this for some time. And do you have any data to identify which are those underrepresented groups, and what's the plan to promote hiring from that? So can you let us know what's the plan?
So I hear two questions there, Trustee Duart, is what are the underrepresented groups, and then
Yes.
what is the plan to get them hired?
Yes, correct. Thank you.
Superintendent O'Hara.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that question. The first order of business will be for us to be doing some surveys to go and collect some data with respect to, how diverse our employee groups are with respect to the teaching profession. That's something that has not occurred as of yet. Certainly, so we don't have certainly any data that would go in and say, for example, how many visible minorities we particularly have in there. We would be working with certainly our equity and diversity manager on that in the future. In terms of when we go to recruitment fairs, we do go and make sure that we do have a diverse recruitment team that does go out, and we try to encourage certainly everyone who's a practicing Catholic to apply to us, and certainly again we are reviewing all of our questions to make sure that there isn't anything that would be systemic discriminatory in any way. So we are certainly going and doing everything that we can to try to encourage people to apply to us. One of the advantages that we do have as a growing board is that because we are a growing board, we do get a lot of applications. And because of the changing face of Milton and how quickly Milton is changing, we are finding that we are having more Catholics, qualified teachers that are moving into the area from various diverse groups. So certainly the intention here is to certainly make sure that the policy reflects the PPM, and we will be working through again, the equity diversity manager and the manager of HR who's in charge of recruitment to put all that into action. Hopefully that answers your question.
Just a follow-up.
Do you have a follow-up, Trustee Duart?
Yes. So again, question to Superintendent to Executive Officer O'Hara. So do we have whatever you mentioned right now? Do we have it put into a procedure, or is it something that we are thinking of doing?
There isn't a procedure that would go and say that we are going out to survey our staff. That is something that will be part of our action plan to implement the policy and procedure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. We've got Trustee O'Brien. You have the floor.
Thank you, through Madam Chair, to Superintendent O'Hara. So Joe, I'm looking at that second bullet. The Halton Catholic District School Board shall promote the hiring of staff from underrepresented groups. So from where you're sitting in the interview room, how do you see that changing for you? Like, you have candidates in front of you with several qualifications, and that's how you've rated things before. But now you're looking at that underrepresented group closer. So how would that look in the interview process, like for you, from where you stand?
Right. Again, through the chair, thank you for that question. I think the first premise would be, again, going and making sure that we're doing the outreach to go and get individuals to apply to our board. And so essentially the faculties where we tend to get more diversity tend to be York, tend to be Toronto, and so we make sure that we, are certainly going there, attending there, and encouraging those new teacher candidates to apply to us. So that's the number one piece. And again, then with respect to the recruitment process, we are doing all kinds of training with our administrators and with our own staff to go and make sure that the questions that we're asking, and certainly that we are, that there isn't any kind of systemic discrimination in any way in terms of, bias, etc. So that, again, while we are fully confident that, we are hiring the best people and we're not putting up any kind of barriers in our hiring process, we are certainly working to go and ensure that that is in fact the case. So we do have many different recruitment teams that are out there that are made up of 2 administrators. The questions that we are asking, are not only have a Catholic lens to it, but we are reviewing them all to go and make sure that there isn't any kind of biases that are in those questions, to make sure that we do have, making sure that we're giving everyone, again, a fair and consistent opportunity to be picked up by us. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question, Trustee O'Brien?
It does. I'm going to jump back in the queue, though, Madam Chair, just because somebody else a chance, and I may just have another one. Thanks.
Okay. Trustee Antomasi, you have the floor.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Executive Officer O'Hara. So I'll draw your attention to page 13, where the beginning word is recruitment for positions will be done as widely as is appropriate to ensure all qualified applicants have the opportunity to apply. I'm wondering if we could, if it would be worthwhile, are we there yet? Recruitment for positions will be done as widely as is appropriate to ensure that all qualified applicants have the opportunity to apply. I was just wondering if we could remove, what it would do if we removed as is appropriate and just go right on to ensure that all qualified applicants have the opportunity to apply. And then I would want to add, which would reaffirm our position that we're trying to be inclusive, and that is, and when qualifications and experience are equal, preference will be given to minority and/or marginalized groups. I'm wondering if that would enhance, by adding that, it would enhance that statement. I'm looking for Executive Officer O'Hara to weigh in on that.
Superintendent O'Hara, do you have the question?
Yes, no, I do understand the point. And again, through you, certainly if that's the will of trustees, we can certainly go and add that statement in. You know, we are making sure that we are hiring the best qualified individuals that represent themselves. That would go a little bit further, Trustee Antiamasi's suggestion, but if it's the will of trustees, we can certainly make that change.
Follow up, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Trustee Antiamasi.
So my question is very specific. Do you feel that that would make us more transparent insofar as establishing that we are determined and that we wish to open up our hiring to the minorities and marginalized? I don't think it would change the spirit of the policy. I would think it would serve to enhance it. Would you not agree with that?
Again, through the chair, I would agree that that change where you would be going and saying if equal, we would hire the candidate with with more diverse. I do think that would certainly increase, potentially increase the diversity on our staff. So I do think that it would be in the spirit of the PPM. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. So.
Thank you. Trustee O'Brien, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think another question through you, Madam Chair, to Superintendent O'Hara. Superintendent O'Hara, you've been in this game a long time. You've seen trends. You've seen effects of policy, PPMs. This PPM, do you see any long-term effects? Like, for example, will the underrepresented someday become the overrepresented? Will the overrepresented become the underrepresented? Will we be here in 5 years again trying to tweak this policy? How do you see this playing out in the long run?
May I, Madam Chair?
Yeah, Superintendent.
Again, through you, and thank you for that question. Certainly, in my time, certainly at this board, what I have seen is that the face of Halton continues to change, and it's certainly changing more rapidly in growing communities like Milton. And with that, what I've found is that the face of our staff is changing very rapidly in many groups, in our EAs, our DCEs, our non-union staff, our APSP group, where certainly staff are becoming certainly more reflective of what our communities and the communities that we serve. With the teaching group, it's still a work in progress, and so that is taking a little bit longer, but it's also a reflection of what we have in terms of who is graduating from the faculties and who's applying to our board. So, and also one piece about the teaching profession is that people tend to teach for a board and stay with that board for their career. And so the turnover tends to be perhaps a little slower than in other employee groups. So I do think that we have work to do in terms of catching up to having a more diverse teaching staff. That will happen as more teachers move into Halton, more Catholic teachers move into Halton, and more individuals start, again, are applying to us. So it will take us a little bit longer, certainly in the teaching profession, because of the reasons that I've indicated, but I do see us certainly catching up to the changing face of our communities.
Thank you.
Trustee O'Hearn-Chernotta, you have the floor.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, to Superintendent O'Hara. Just a very quick question. When I was reading the PPM 165, there's a portion in there that talks about employment mobility. I just want clarity that my understanding is correct, that it's just speaking to that you give equal opportunity to any applicants for any positions. It doesn't matter what school they're teaching at or what location they're at, that everyone gets equal opportunity. Is that the spirit of that portion?
Again, through the chair, the point of the employment mobility is to allow experienced teachers from other boards to apply to permanent positions within our board and for us to have the ability to hire them. So that's something that was restricted under Reg 274. There still are some restrictions under the central terms, but we do have the ability to hire approximately 33% of our new hires from external sources and not from our occasional teacher lists. So the employment mobility piece has been a concern by many boards. So for example, teachers that are teaching at Dufferin Peel or Toronto Catholic who move out to our area, buy a new house in Milton, it was very difficult for us to go and hire them based on Reg 274. Now we can do that much more easily. Again, hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you for the clarification.
Do you have a follow-up, Trustee O'Hearn-Chernotta?
No, I don't. But you can use Georgetown as examples, not always Milton, eh, Superintendent O'Hara? I'm just joking. Okay, move on.
Thank you. I have a question, as I see nobody's in the queue. Superintendent O'Hara, have we consulted with our equity and inclusion manager in regards to this policy and its review?
Again, through you, this policy has been reviewed by senior staff, to which the equity and inclusion manager is part of. So the answer to that is yes, it's been reviewed.
Okay, and in just one last question, has it been thought of maybe consulting somebody from the outside in regards to ensuring that that our hiring practices do reflect the diversity, and ensuring that we can follow up with PPM 165?
Again, through you, that's sort of step 2 in the process. We need to go and make sure that our policy is reflective of the PPM, and then again, we're going to continue to be working, with our HR managers and with our equity and diversity manager to go and make sure that we don't have any systemic barriers in our recruitment and selection processes.
Thank you. Director Daly, you have your hand up. Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, just a little bit. And I think Joe kind of finished on it. once we have the policy in place, there's certainly a lot of work to do to follow up and to really meet the spirit of the PPM. Part of that will be, doing a census survey of our own employees to see what the makeup of our employee group is. Hopefully doing some voluntary census surveys of our applicants, and then ultimately putting a process in place where we can determine how much ground we've gained. Trustee O'Brien said in 4 or 5 years we'll be kind of coming back to this, hopefully in 2 or 3 years or 2 years, or if in fact it is 5 years, when we say what's the impact of this policy been on the board, we can point to some real indicators. So that's the work that we need to continue to do going forward.
Just for clarification, Director Daly, though, and it's not to you, I think it's actually more to Superintendent O'Hara. I thought I heard one of the things is that you've already have questions that you're trying to look at for more diverse applicants. If we haven't really talked to anybody on the outside to ensure that, what the questions we're asking, I'm just wondering, how are those developed?
Well, I've still got my camera on, so I'll jump in. If we're talking about interview questions, we have reviewed interview questions in a number of positions, both internally, internally, and with our Human Rights and Equity Senior Manager. What I was referring to was not necessarily the interview process, although that is part of it, but we'll need to examine kind of the process from beginning to end as we continue to work through this. So what does our current workforce look like? What sort of applicants, and tracking the type of applicants we're getting, both under the teaching hiring policy and ultimately under any of our applicants to the board, and then being able to measure that to see, in fact, if we are changing. There's a lot of elements to it. Certainly looking at, Trustee Antomasi talked about, given 2 candidates of equal qualifications, even that, what we mean by equal qualifications, we probably need to land on that, because it could be a teacher with 10 years experience versus a teacher with 5 years experience, but with experience outside of teaching that brings a different skill set that you might say, you know what, we're going to land on this person because they bring something else to the table. So that's a long way of saying, although we're asking for this policy to come to board to be approved, it's really the beginning of a process.
Thank you. Trustee DeRosa, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A very simple question for Superintendent O'Hara. Joe, do you expect that this policy will either improve your chances of finding good candidates, or limit them, or nothing at all? In the not too distant future, obviously.
Again, through the chair, I do see that the revocation of Reg 274 as being an improvement for boards to have the ability to be able to attract more teachers from other areas. Reg 274 really created a situation where teachers became chattel to a board, and it was very hard for a teacher to be able to move boards, because in order to do so, they would have to go and move as an occasional teacher and get on an occasional teacher list and work for a while before they could get hired permanently. Those restrictions are now gone, with the ability of us being able to hire a fairly large percentage of people directly. So again, I do see this as an improvement in this to give us the ability to move faster towards a more diverse teaching population.
Do you have a follow-up question, Trustee DeRosa?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Trustee O'Brien, did you have another question?
No, Madam Chair, just a comment on the side. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Seeing as there's no further questions, we'll take this to a recorded vote. Trustee Duart.
In favor.
Trustee Antomasi.
Against, Madam Chair.
Do you mean opposed? Okay. Trustee Carabella.
Opposed.
Trustee Murphy.
In favor?
Trustee O'Brien.
Okay, just a point of clarification. We are going with the slight change that Trustee Antomasi made, correct?
No, we're not. It wasn't, he didn't move for it to be changed. He asked a question of Trustee O'Hara, Superintendent O'Hara, but it wasn't moved for him. He didn't request for it to be changed.
Thank you. I'm going to say in favor.
Okay, thank you. Trustee O'Hearn-Chernotta.
In favor?
Trustee Kelly.
Sorry, mic issues. In favor.
That's okay. Okay. Trustee Goubert has stepped away for a moment. So Trustee Agnew.
In favor.
Trustee DeRosa.
I'm in favor, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I am also in favor. So the policy will be brought forward to the next board meeting. Thank you. Moving on to item 4.2. This is item policy I-46, correspondence to the Board of Trustees. Can I have someone move that the policy committee recommends that the newly drafted policy I-46 correspondence to the Board of Trustees be forwarded to the May 18th, 2021 regular board meeting for first reading?
Trustee Agnew?
Okay.
Moved by Trustee Agnew, seconded by Trustee O'Brien?
Yes.
Okay. And this is Trustee Agnew and Trustee Carabella. Who would like to take this first?
It's up to you, Helen. Do you want me to start?
Yes, please. You prepared the report, so go ahead, Brenda.
Okay. So, sorry, Marta, can you just scroll a little bit? Just a little bit down. Perfect. Okay, so this is a policy that was created out of a need that was identified, and myself and Trustee Carabella worked on researching and putting together the elements of this policy, which we bring to you today. Essentially, as we had mentioned a little bit before, essentially the idea behind it is just to try to make our correspondence policy as clear and as transparent as possible. There is some confusion from some of our stakeholders on exactly what the process is with respect to submitting correspondence, having correspondence addressed, having correspondence included in board packages as an example. And so we attempted to put something together that we felt would be mutually exclusive of all the things that we needed to have, the elements that should be in there. And this is what we have placed on the table for consideration from our fellow trustees this evening. Happy to take any questions. Did you want to add to that, Trustee Carabella?
Thank you, Trustee Agnew. I think there's some points for discussion we can have, and then I did have something as well I wanted to add later on to discuss with the fellow trustees that's different from what we have, but let's open the floor to the others.
All right, thank you. Trustee Murphy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have...
Can we actually, sorry, Trustee Murphy, can I just 1 second for, Marta, can I ask that you scroll to the actual policy, please?
Hi, this is the policy. Is this
scroll down, like,
scroll
yeah,
down?
like scroll down so we can actually see. Yes, perfect. Thank you. Okay, sorry, Trustee Murphy. Thank you.
No problem. I have 4 points, so we can handle it whichever way you like. I could just bring up 2 and then go back in the queue, or if you want me to just say the 4 points and then we can kind of deal with them, it's up to you. I'm always easy to please.
Okay, so let's start with the first one.
Okay, so with regards to item number 2, correspondence addressed to all trustees. So recently, a lot of these points have to do with what we've kind of experienced just recently. So when there's a large volume of emails, when there is a lot of obvious form letters or chain emails, or however you want to describe it, there's nothing here that would allow the chair to have some discretion on whether to respond or not. So, last 3 weeks, we've probably received 1,500 emails or 1,200 emails, of which many of them are cut and paste form. So I think that needs to be addressed. There needs to be some kind of qualification, or some, something that gives the chair some latitude in that it's not practical to try and respond to 1,500 emails. So that was my first point.
So let's look at your first point. Or actually, you know what? Why don't you give us all of your points, and then
okay.
I don't think there's anybody else in the queue. Oh, no, there is somebody else in the queue. So let's do your first 2 points, Trustee Murphy, and then we can have a discussion about them, and then we'll move on.
Okay. So the second was with regards to the next paragraph, which is all correspondence requiring the collective decision of the board and which has yet to be decided by the board is put together for discussion. So I guess I have two issues with this. One is the practicality of trying to get together to discuss the issue, all of the trustees, to come up with a consensus. And then really it's something that isn't, if it's a motion that hasn't been brought before the table, it could change materially. So really, to me, it's not even appropriate to discuss at this time. So to me, the response should be from the chair that matters before the board, before they've been discussed or decided on by the board, are not appropriate to comment on. That's how I think that portion should be handled. And then I have 2 other topics later down, but I can go back in the queue for those.
So let's start with the first part. We'll have a conversation or discussion in regards to the first piece that you raised, which is, and using the most recent chain emails that we've gotten. It makes mention of a response. It doesn't say how detailed the response has to be. It could simply be received. Thank you for your email. So I don't know that it needs to be defined. I'm not sure if Trustee Agnew or Trustee Carabella, what your thoughts were on that. If you just want to maybe address that to Trustee Murphy.
I can say something as you did after this. I really appreciated the statement you made at the website. So that was in a way an answer to those letters. It's one way of answering the letters, as well as could just be, as Trustee Guzzo said, a shorter acknowledgement.
Okay. Yeah, I just think, if the spirit of the policy is such that there is that, I'll use the term latitude, but, common sense, let's say, in the situation we're dealing with. I don't want to have to then start defending myself to other trustees why I haven't replied, or whoever is the next chair, pity the poor bugger.
I think though the issue, Trustee Murphy, is, and Trustee Agnew and Trustee Carabella can correct me if I'm wrong, is the point of not having all 9 trustees respond when it comes to all of us, or it's directed to the chair. We've run into this, either somebody's responding or nobody's responding. So I think that really is to kind of define it. Maybe Trustee Agnew, I see you've got your camera on. Maybe you can speak to that piece.
Yeah, and just for a point of clarification, that the policy was actually developed and put together by Trustee Carabella and I prior to the current situation that we're in, but this is not a singular situation. It won't be the last one the Board of Trustees face, and it certainly hasn't been the first. And so just to say just to further what Trustee Guzzo had said is, I believe that it's just a matter of acknowledgement to that sender. It doesn't, again, the detail can be to the discretion of the chair responding, but when it's sent to all trustees, we know that according to the process, it typically would be the chair that would respond. But just to make sure that they are being responded to in some fashion. I think that's the what we've heard from stakeholders and ratepayers is that there's oftentimes that emails will be sent and there'll be no response sent back to them in any fashion. And that's not a slight on anybody. Like you said, we get a ton of emails. But just if there's a mechanism there to at least acknowledge the receipt of the email, I think that's important. And then there can be some consideration as to how, what is said in there, but at least some sort of response, I think is important.
Okay.
Okay.
I think Director Daly has his hand up.
I do see that. So he says it's kind of in regards to this, Director Daly.
Sorry, once a chair, always a chair, right?
Thank you, and for you, Madam Chair. In that same section, correspondence addressed to all trustees, in the second bullet, the board shall provide direction as to how either the chair or secretary of the board shall respond. Is that, I'm not sure what that means.
Trustee Agnew or Trustee Carabella, do you want to clarify?
I can take a stab at it, and then Trustee Carabella, if I've missed the cue, you can certainly fill in the gaps. So we do see some emails that do come through that are addressed sometimes to the chair and the secretary, sometimes to the secretary, with a copy to all of us, and sometimes to the chair with a copy of all of us. So I believe that that's why the inclusion of chair and secretary of the board was put in there, depending on, who the email was sent to specifically and who the sender is looking for response or action from. Trustee Carabella, is that correct, or did I miss that?
No, that's fine. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on Trustee Murphy's, Director Daly, go ahead.
Then I would suggest then that should read, the board shall provide direction as to who shall respond, not how respond. Because to be honest, if trustees are going to tell me how to respond, like you're going to tell me what to say, it's really not my response, it's your response.
Okay, I don't know if other trustees.
Trustee Agnew, what do you?
Something. I believe that's correct, in that we would want to have who shall respond. Let me just look at it again.
Okay, so that would be then the board shall provide direction as to who shall respond, either the chair or secretary of the board.
So I don't know that that's this. I don't think that was the spirit behind it. I think the idea behind it, and I don't disagree with you, Director Daly, I think the issue behind it was, again, is that there's oftentimes that we receive an email that comes to all of us, and it could be multi-pronged. It may have questions for both trustees and the secretary. It may have, things like that. And so how are we responding to those types of emails? And maybe this is not the correct wording for that. Maybe there's better wording for that. But we do see that happen. And then those emails either don't get fully responded to, or they just get missed entirely. So I agree that it can be a decision as to who needs to respond. If the email is more applicable to a staff concern or a staff suggestion versus a board of trustees, I think that would be applicable.
Can I just ask a question, Trustee Agnew? Because it does, part 2 says correspondence addressed to all trustees, so it might not even be applicable for the director at this point.
Right. Yeah. Listen,
could we address could we address the point that so I would like just to understand or to get a feel from all trustees, so this is an issue that has not been debated or decided by the board, and we are to give a response that is going to be through, I assume, a simple majority consensus. and then the director or the chair has to communicate it. So first, is it appropriate to even, is it practical, number one? And is it appropriate to be having this mini debate before we debated it at the table? In my view, it isn't. We should have a standard response that it hasn't been debated before the board. Our response is it's inappropriate for us to comment at this time.
Right. And if I can jump in, Madam Chair, if that's okay with you?
Sure it is. Go ahead.
Okay. So what I was going to say is that, Trustee Murphy, yes, I believe that is a very good point. And that, I think that's also part of this is when we have something coming before the board, we often will get emails that are telling us opinions one way or the other. And I think sometimes there are individual responses that go out to those emails that may not be consistent with the messaging that needs to come, as you just stated. So I think, again, the idea perhaps that might be behind that as well is when an email comes in or correspondence comes in some fashion that is about a decision collectively that the board needs to make. Because I'm assuming that the correspondence is coming in because something has been seen in a previous agenda or is coming up for discussion. And so that's where we need to see a response that comes from the chair that says, or secretary of the board, but probably the chair that says exactly what you just said. This is a matter before the board, is yet to be decided. This is because, again, I think that we do see some situations where individual trustees may respond and not give that, I don't want to say
objective view.
Do you know what I'm trying to say? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep. So we would need to change the wording here then,
okay.
Right?
Sure.
I think Trustee Ahern-Janota as well has a point on this piece. Trustee Ahern-Janota.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, okay. I'll put you in the queue after her. Okay, Trustee O'Brien.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I just want a couple points that Trustee Murphy and Trustee Agnew have discussed. So item number 2.1, I think this is great. When I wasn't a trustee, I would always be confused if I'd send a letter and then wonder why I wasn't getting a response from all the trustees, only to find out in that era, only the chair would respond. So put it in black and white is excellent. The second bullet point, I think, and I can't speak for everybody, but I don't know the spirit for Trustee Agnew and Carabella, but as long as someone that's sending an email gets an acknowledgement that we acknowledge your email, and if it's something that hasn't come to the board yet, we acknowledge your email, the meeting on this will occur on this date, thank you for your email, something like that, just so maybe they're acknowledged. I'm not sure if that's the spirit of that bullet point, but that's how I read that to be.
Trustee Agnew, I see you shaking your head. Is that was the spirit?
I'm nodding my head.
Yeah. Okay.
But yes, no, that's correct. That is correct. Trustee Ahern-Janota, is just that there be something that go out that is consistent in its messaging, and the best way to do that is to have it come from a single source, and that the wording is exactly as we were saying, which is the matter has not come before the board. Thank you for your, thank you for your email. That sort of piece, just so that the sender, again, their email has been acknowledged. They're reminded again of the process that the decision has not yet come to the board. Even if you want to include a link, there's a link to the meeting that's coming up. Just something like that goes out. So that's really the spirit of it. Is nothing, there's nothing hidden in that messaging. It's just to make sure that the messaging is consistent. It's guaranteed a response, and that it go out ideally from a single point of contact on those emails sent to all trustees.
And I think, just if I could, Madam Chair, just to speak to the response portion of the first bullet point, Trustee Murphy and Trustee Carabelli, it doesn't have to be a response in email. I think if there's multiple emails about the same subject, a posting, with the help of our communication department, who's awesome, can help us do something like that. So again, just so our folks, our stakeholders are understanding, we hear them. Here's a response, whatever way that's penned. That's my comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Trustee O'Brien, you have a comment in regards to these changes?
Yes, thank you through Madam Chair to Trustee Murphy's second point, and Trustee Agnew did speak on this about all correspondence requiring the collective decision of the board, and which is yet to be decided by the board, shall be put before the board. And I agree with Trustee Agnew, 95% of those are probably correspondence relating to things that are already on the agenda, and there were people are or groups are responding to that. But the way it's worded, you could almost interpret it as being, if I want to bring something before the board, I write correspondence and it will be brought before the board. And I just want to make sure that our policy is clear on that. Because if I'm reading that, all correspondence requiring the collective decision of the board, in which is yet to be decided by the board, shall be put before the board for consideration and direction. I could almost read that to mean, I want something brought before the board. You know, I would like painted unicorns on every lawn. I could bring it before, I could write a letter, and according to this, I could put it before the board just by correspondence. So I don't know if we want to tweak that or not, but I like this correspondence policy. It's very timely. Thanks.
Okay. So Trustee Agnew, based on Trustee Murphy's comments on there, do we see, like for that second bullet, if we should be maybe making a change there? You're muted, Trustee Agnew.
I'm always open to my fellow trustees' input, and if we, I mean, again, this is a policy for, you know, for us, correspondence to the board. So I think it's important that everybody be okay with it and be okay with the wording. So if there's wording, Trustee Murphy, that you would like to suggest, or, you know, Trustee O'Brien, if there's something specific to that second point there that you'd like to see us tighten up or, you know, clarify, I mean, let's do that. I'm okay with that.
Okay. I see we've got some other, yes. So I see we've got some other trustees' hands up in the air. So maybe, how about we do it this way? I think the issue is the piece on having the secretary of the board in there. I think that was one piece of it, and the other piece is just on on who should be responding. So the board shall provide direction as to how the chair shall respond. Would maybe make more sense. Trustee Murphy, is that what you were getting at?
Well, what I was getting at was the response should be I was going to use the word canned response, but that's not the spirit of what I mean. The response to me should be, if the item has not been brought before the board for debate, that it would not be appropriate for the board to comment at this time. That would be our response.
So, okay, so the only thing,
you know, following up, it will be addressed.
We have to put something. We'll have to put something in there though for our stakeholders or for parents, anybody putting in, so they know what needs to do. And maybe that's what needs to say is if it hasn't come before the board, then the chair shall respond with what steps need to be taken. I think just not to respond and say, you know, we haven't talked about this, so that's your answer, is not something that we want to say to our parents, stakeholders, ratepayers. I think we need to then, maybe what needs to say is that, you know, the chair will respond in a manner outlining what their recourse is if it hasn't been put to the board, whether it be a delegation, whether it be, you know, something else. And if it's operational, then it should be directed to the director, not to the trustees. Does that make sense?
I think it does, but you know, the challenge is trying to capture a whole bunch of possible scenarios with one statement, right? So, yeah, I think you know, what Trustee O'Brien brought up was also quite valid, was that if the expectation is I can send a letter to all trustees and then I expect the ball to be picked up, was another element to this too, right? So yeah, I think that I'm looking at it, trying to look at it from a practical standpoint. Now, keeping in mind that obviously we're a bit jaded, just having gone through an onslaught of an unbelievable amount of emails, and the reality is that the chair would need support from communications to handle all of this correspondence. You know, unless you've got some little elves with typing away, there's no way you can handle at times this volume. It's just not practical.
Okay, so do you have a proposal then in how to deal with this piece?
Well,
just because I want to be able to deal with your portion, and then we have other trustees in the queue as well.
Yeah, so why don't we hear from other trustees and maybe they have points on it, and then we can, at the end, we can kind of regroup and figure out what the wording we want to use.
Okay, sounds good. We'll move on then. So Trustee DeRosa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Interesting conversation, but what comes to mind is I think we have different types of correspondence that are thrown at us. There's obviously the correspondence that asks or raises an issue with all of us trustees, which I would think we entrust our chair, whoever that might be, at any point in time, in conjunction with the secretary of the board, to answer on behalf of the board, because those questions might be operational. They may raise an issue that requires really the secretary of the board to look into with his staff. So that would be one type of correspondence for me. The other type of correspondence that we get is, the constituent who wants to write a letter on an issue that's already on the agenda and wants to have a letter included. And I believe we currently run that practice within certain guidelines. And I would suggest that we should, whatever guidelines are in place, any request to include a letter in a board package should be accepted. And I don't want to spill over into the issue of delegations, but if there is a delegation that needs to be had, I think delegations need to be somewhat approved, and if they're not able to handle it within the time limitations of the current meeting, we've got to figure out a way to give that individual voice. Then, so that's two types. Three types of communication. Then there's the other communication where I have a constituent who knows me and wants to deal with me directly. I should have the opportunity to respond directly to that constituent, which I don't think so far has been a problem. The other thing I would raise is the issue of tracking the letters that we get through. I'm not surprised that with the volume of letters, and I'm not really even referring to the extraordinary volumes that we received recently, but we really don't know how many letters are out there waiting to be responded to at any point in time. So I'm interested in some form of tracking mechanism, and certainly the technology is available to do that, where we have a repository of letters that come into us, and every trustee can go in and see what type of concerns are being expressed by our constituents. That gives us a better sense of what the issues are, gives us a better sense of how they're handled. And as those letters are responded either through the chair or through a combination of the chair and the secretary, we get a basis for understanding how the issues are resolved. I don't see this in this policy. We could wordsmith and maybe fine tune, but I don't see the bigger picture in this policy. And so those are my comments, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Sorry, Trustee DeRosa, I apologize, but for some reason I keep being kicked out of Teams tonight. So just a couple of things, and I think we can let Trustee Carabella and Trustee Agnew kind of respond to it, but we're not talking about correspondence that gets sent directly to trustees. This is correspondence addressed to all trustees, is one of it. But Trustee Agnew or Trustee Carabella, did you want to respond to some of the comments? And the other piece I think too is there is no policy or guidelines on how to respond. So that's what this is going to try to fix.
Again, happy to comment, and if Trustee Carabella wants to jump in, if you're okay with that, Trustee Carabella?
Go ahead.
If you want to go first, please go ahead.
No, I had some other points. I'm not really clear on a tracking system because we all do get different emails. So I would get it from my Oakville constituents and you from Burlington. And right. So I don't understand really how we'd all track that. Right. And I think we all have the responsibility to our constituents to reply to them or to forward their email to where it can get a response. So I'm not really sure how that would work.
Yeah, so just a couple of comments to that as well that Trustee DeRosa brought up. So as you said, Trustee Guzzo, this is just not to say to individual trustees, it does say addressed to all trustees. And yes, I recognize that there are different types of correspondence. We try to address most of those types of correspondence in this policy. And again, we do not have a policy that directly deals with correspondence. We've heard from multiple statepayers and ratepayers how confusing the process can be. It can be arbitrary at times. They're not quite sure when things are due. They're not quite sure who will be responding, those types of things. So the idea behind this is to try to make this process and again, if you read the entire process, it is quite comprehensive. And it is to try to make things a little bit easier, A, for the people that are corresponding with the board, and then B, for the response back. And I would also comment that while there are trustees who are great at responding back to emails, and this is not a slag on anybody, it can be overwhelming. The reality is that we do hear from people who never get a response back. So when an email is sent to all trustees, there has to be some mechanism for acknowledgement of that email and a response back to that email. And so, again, understanding what Trustee Murphy is saying, that that could be an abundance of emails depending on the topic at hand. There still has to be a response back because people say, did you get my email? Did you not get my email? Is it being included in the package? Is it not being included in the package? It's clear around that. Needing to say, so there's a bunch of different things that I think the hope with this policy is to make those a little bit clearer, clarify that, be more transparent in the process, and hopefully that will help everybody. Certainly is not meant to be a stumbling block or to create more work. I think actually it's there to try to simplify the process more so than anything.
May I make a comment?
Is it in regards to this, Trustee Carabella?
Well, in response to, yes, what Trustee Murphy was saying, as well as Trustee DeRosa.
Yep, go ahead.
Well, one way, that second bullet, the last sentence, the board shall provide direction as to either the chair or secretary of the board shall respond. I think we can take away that sentence, and in the first part of correspondence addressed to staff and trustees, we could say when the correspondence is addressed to the director, comma, to a member of the staff or a member of the staff and copied to one or more trustees, staff shall respond to the correspondence, and the director will respond to the correspondence and provide a copy of the response to each trustee copied in the correspondence, so that we can place any emails that go to the director can be acknowledged by him in that first bullet.
Okay, so that's a potential.
One potential solution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Trustee Intomasi, you have your hand up?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. So I have one question of Trustees Agnew and Carabella. Who is this document written solely by the two trustees, or did staff provide assistance?
So I can answer that, Trustee Carabella, if you like.
Yeah, we were both there, so go ahead.
Yep. Yeah, and there was significant, so it was written by both Trustee Carabella and I, but we did reference numerous other correspondence policies that are at other boards. So we were able to take a look at how they're doing things. And we also, this was shared with our communications department as well for their input on the process, what is currently done, and how to clean that up a little bit. So so a lot of research did go into this, and a lot of stakeholder feedback went into this, and both Trustee Carabella and I individually came up with what it was that we wanted to address, and then came together collectively to put together one document that we agreed upon.
Do you have a follow-up question, Trustee Intomasi?
Follow-up and a comment. So as you went through this particular process, did you ensure that our bylaws are congruent and our governance policy is congruent with the steps that you've undertaken in this policy?
Trustee Agnew or Trustee Carabella?
Yep, so we did review bylaw, and I don't believe that there was anything, unless you can point to it, Trustee Intomasi, I'd be happy to hear it. Certainly have the humility for that. If there is something that we've missed that does not align with our bylaws, please let us know. But we did take a look at the correspondence piece that is in our bylaw, which is very minimal and not very robust. So
I will only make one comment. So even the title of the particular policy doesn't fit with the body of this particular policy. You're speaking about correspondence to the Board of Trustees, and our correspondence comes in 3 different manners. It either goes to HCDSB, it either goes to all trustees, or it could go to the secretary of the board and or the chair of the board. This particular policy does not address that. Our bylaws are not congruent with what you've got written out here. This policy is not ready. I hope you don't take personal offense.
No, not at all. Your opinion is your opinion, Trustee Intomasi.
Yes, you're right. Exactly. It's my opinion. And I can tell you this policy lacks specific reference to certain terminology that you use. You need to spell that out. I would suggest that this go back to staff who write a policy and have them vet it and ensure that all the other policies that this bridges from are congruent, because I can tell you, if you go into community engagement V18, if you go into public concerns and complaints process, if you go into guidelines for trustees communication, none of this marries with what's already in other policies. The purpose of a policy—
Those are actually all provided to us, Trustee Intomasi.
I have the—
as references. Those were given to us from staff as references for this policy. That's why they're listed.
Okay. Trustee Intomasi, can you finish, please? And then we'll move on to the next person.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to add to that. What Trustee Agnew said is that she did mention that staff, her and I, we spoke with Superintendent Bakaich going through this policy. And if there's our suggestions for a better title that encompasses, it's true, we do talk about then staff and talk about the director. So if there's a better title that can better encompass what we've done with this trustee, I'd be open to that.
Thank you, Trustee Carabella. And I think you've answered the question. I think both you and Trustee Agnew have answered the question, which is you have consulted with staff. So that's great. Trustee Duart, you have a question?
To you, Madam Chair, this is one element which I'm just wondering if Trustee Guzzo and Trustee Carabella thought about it. So I've seen correspondence where one person would write to all the trustees and then would go and write individually the same copy paste and write individually to each trustee. So how is that covered in this policy? How do we work with that? And what was the thinking?
Trustee Agnew or Trustee Carabella?
I can try to answer that. I would I would think that the one that's addressed to all trustees would then get acknowledged by the chair. And if that person then has written trustee separately, then that trustee could give their separate response.
Okay.
Thank you, Trustee Carabella. Trustee Agnew, do you have anything to add to that, or?
No, I would have done the same. I would have said the same thing again. This is how we respond to correspondence that is sent in whatever manner, 3, 4, 5, 6 different ways we get it, is to have a clear and concise way that the correspondence is responded to. This is not specific to individual trustees, but again, as it says, it's correspondence addressed to all trustees or to staff and trustees, not individual trustees.
Okay.
Thank you. Trustee Dewar, do you have a follow-up question?
No, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Director Daly, did you have another comment, or?
No, I'm good, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Trustee O'Brien, you have the floor.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. And it looks like Trustee Murphy has put in the column a really good solution to that second bullet. And again, in reference to what Trustee Agnew said, 95% of our correspondence will probably be on items already on the table, but just to tighten it so that there's no expectation that if I send a letter, it's going to be put forward. I think Trustee Murphy's comment there is, I mean, the little word smithing there is really good. He says there may be correspondence regarding any upcoming motions or subject that has not been discussed at the board table. The chair will respond in a manner outlining the next date and time of the discussion. I think that's good. I was going to say something else, but that fits as well. I would agree with that, unless somebody else has a better way of saying that. Just so that's the second bullet under correspondence addressed to all trustees.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Carabella, you had your hand up in the chat.
I did. That was to give the suggestion of where to put the director.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Okay, so that being said, I think everybody has spoken on this piece. Let's see if we have a consensus to make that change to bullet point number 2. So I'll ask Trustee Agnew and Trustee Carabella first, as this is your recommended policy. Are you okay with those proposed changes?
I'm fine with the changes.
Okay, is that the change that Trustee Murphy put in the
Yes, Trustee Murphy put in the chat box. Yep.
Okay, I had another idea. All correspondence requiring the collective decision of the board and which has yet to be decided by the board shall be acknowledged by the chair to the extent possible. His is very good too, so I like his too, if that's fine.
Okay, so let's look at his first, and then because his change was proposed first, and then so to not confuse things, then we'll take a look at yours, Helena, if that's is not the consensus. So is there anybody opposed to the changes that Trustee Murphy has put forward?
I am, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Trustee Antomasi. Is anybody else opposed?
Yes, I am, but not because of the actual change itself. It's the overall policy. Thanks.
Okay, well then that's not, we're not dealing with the overall policy at this point, so thank you. So Trustee DeRosa and Trustee Antomasi are opposed to those. Anybody else opposed to the proposed changes that Trustee Murphy has made to bullet number 2? Okay, so we have majority is okay with that change. So we'll make those noted changes.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Trustee Dewar, are you opposed?
No. Could
okay,
you just read that statement from the beginning? I think it's only half a statement that Trustee Murphy has put there. So how will it go?
So it will be, shall there be any correspondence regarding any upcoming motions? It will replace all of bullet 2, is my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong, Trustee Murphy?
Yes, that's correct. You may want to just highlight. Well, no, I think it could be wordsmith, but yeah, the sentiment as it's written is, I think, would be fine to replace that bullet.
Okay. So, I'll have to confer with my motion writer from Georgetown. how about we take out shall there be, because I think it just needs to say any correspondence regarding any upcoming motions or subject that has not been discussed at the board table. The chair will respond in a manner outlining the next date and time of the discussion.
Yes.
That's good. I like that.
Okay. So we'll make those noted changes to that. Now I'm going to start. Let's start with a new chat now. Is there any other comments in regards to the policy? Trustee O'Brien, you have the floor.
Thank you, through Madam Chair. Now, Trustee Murphy had 2 more points, but I don't mind waiting.
No, and that's fine. And he can. He was going to go back, and we dealt with 2 points, and then we'll go back. So he needs to go back in the chat. Thank you. But do you have anything, Trustee O'Brien?
I do, and I want to thank again Trustee Carabello and Andy for bringing this forward because it is timely. Over the past 4 weeks, we've seen an immense amount of correspondence, more than we have seen probably in a year. And I wanted, and then you sort of addressed this in the word stakeholder, and you sort of addressed it, and Trustee Carabello mentioned what you mentioned, constituents. I've gotten many emails and from people that were outside of Halton, some even outside the province, and I know one trustee even got something from outside the country. And I wonder if in this policy we could kind of set a limit around that, and maybe I'm wondering how we could do it without being onerous, maybe even under the definition of correspondence, communication exchange by written means, by stakeholders in Halton. I don't know, but I spent a lot of time just filtering out who was from where. And sometimes you could, sometimes you couldn't. So I think it's good to put in the policy that correspondence should be from our ratepayers or our stakeholders, at least our stakeholders, and people outside of Halton, outside the province. I think we can just leave them. That's just my opinion. I don't know how you would put that in here, but if anybody has any ideas, I would love to hear it.
I think that I agree with everybody else that's putting in this. I think that we can go back up and take a look under, Marta, can we move up the policy to the top? Okay, no, too far. So actually right there under application and scope, this policy applies to parents, guardians, students, ratepayers, organizations, or members of the broader community who wish to share correspondence with the Board of Trustees. So I think it already addresses that in that piece. Trustee O'Brien, would you not agree?
Sure, and just so it's clear that we all agree on that, I'm reading that, as you said, Trustee Guzzo, that if someone does come from outside of Halton, I really could basically ignore it if I don't feel they're part of that group, correct? I mean,
well, it goes into further, right? Like if you read further into the points, it talks about it's got to be in the interest of the HCDSB stakeholders. Ministry memorandums are also included.
Right.
Correspondence from any organization that requests that their letter be shared with the Board of Trustees and the greater HCDSB community. So I think it goes further as to outline what is considered acceptable correspondence.
Okay. Let me think about that. Let me think about that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. Trustee Murphy, are we going to go on to your other 2 points? So let's tell us where we are.
Yeah, I could go back in the queue. I don't want to hog all the airtime. No. It's up to you.
Everybody has had a chance to speak, so you're next up in the queue. So let's look at your next 2 points.
Okay. So the next 2 points was under criteria for adding correspondence to a board meeting. On the 3rd point, it doesn't address something that has come up a few times this year. So when we receive correspondence from a group that is or an organization that's, I'm going to use the term objectionable is not probably the right term, controversial. So the content of the message is fine, but it's coming from somebody, a group that could be viewed as you know, objectionable within the framework of the organization we are. There's nothing that really prevents that from being adopted, and it's been questioned a few times this year. You know, again, the content of the letter is fine. It's who it's coming from is the problem. So I just wanted to get trustees' opinion on that. And then the other point was accepting correspondence 3 p.m. the day before the board meeting. You know, it doesn't, first of all, from a practical standpoint of having to manage the agenda and the package for staff is very difficult. It's difficult for people to have enough time to absorb and process what is being added. So I would like to keep it as it is now, which is Friday, the Friday before the agenda is put out. But so those are kind of the 2 points.
Okay, so just of your last point, I know it's been kind of different with us being virtual, but correspondence and questions to the board were allowed right up until the start of the meetings prior to us going virtual. So there is no written that you have to have correspondence in by Friday. So I think that's just a practice that maybe you've adopted. I think it's been different. It's varied based on the chairs. But in regards to your correspondence and containing, let's see if maybe Trustee Agnew and Trustee Carabella can further elaborate on the point in regards to the derogatory and inflammatory, like what will be the measure that we use to determine what. Yep, go ahead, Trustee Carabella.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you for bringing that point up, Trustee Murphy, because I did, after everyone was finished, I did want to address that point, and I personally would like to add an amendment to this if it's going to go to the board. So if we're ready, but to address that, because and with this way of phrasing it, organizations whose stated mandate is antithetical to the tenets of the Catholic faith will not be included in the board agenda package. I think that would be a separate bullet on its own. It's not part of being derogatory or inflammatory. It is just that as a board, parents send their children to our school knowing that our institution defines itself as being distinctly Catholic, and we have an obligation to carry out our mission through a Catholic lens and remaining true at all times to the Catholic faith. So, and there have been some letters that have come from, I think, in the past little while, we've had the letter in particular, I brought it to the attention, the Dying with Dignity. That is an organization that advocates killing people and suicide, assisted suicide, which is against the tenets of the Catholic Church. So something like that, I agree, should be in there as a bullet point. So I wanted to propose that as an amendment.
Okay, Trustee Carabella, I understand, but we're trying to deal. Trustee Murphy actually has the floor right now. So as the writer of the course of this policy, yourself and Trustee Agnew, I wanted you to kind of give context to this piece, not to make another change. I know you're in the queue to propose a change. So we're dealing with Trustee Murphy's concern right now.
I was addressing his concern, Madam Chair, that I agree with it. So thank you for bringing that forward.
Trustee Agnew, can you just give some context on what you were using as a measure for the correspondence containing inappropriate or derogatory, inflammatory, disparaging statements?
Yeah, so this wording was provided to us, and it's wording that is used currently with anything that's being submitted to the board for public for sharing with the public. And so, you know, the idea behind this is that we certainly want to hear from as many ratepayers and stakeholders as possible. We understand that people are going to be angry at times, and that's completely justifiable depending on the matter that's on the table. But, you know, again, we ask that anything that's sent forward is definitely appropriate, is not derogatory, doesn't, you know, name names. And so that's the spirit behind it, is, you know, we're happy to receive correspondence that may not agree with all of our views necessarily, or opinions, or the matter, like I said, on the table, but it needs to be respectful and all the things that have been identified here. And could I comment to Trustee Murphy's comment about the correspondence received no later than 3 p.m.?
Yeah, that's what's on the table. So.
Okay. So I agree. I think it is a tight window, but, you know, to your point, Trustee Guzzo, is we were receiving them up to the last minute. Whether that is, you know, just because that was the practice, I'm not saying it was right or wrong. I think the challenge is that there has to be a compromise between when that package comes out for the public to review, and them to have time to send in correspondence, because some people are not aware of what's coming out until the correspondence package is published on our website. And so it doesn't give them a whole lot of time to send in correspondence if they're looking to send in correspondence specific to something coming up at the board table. So I think that's the challenge, is, you know, so, you know, is it Monday morning at 9 a.m.? Is it, or the day before, is it 9 a.m.? I don't know what that is, but I think trying to get it in by the Friday is just not feasible, because there are people who do write correspondence in once they see the board package. So we just have to give some latitude for that.
Thank you. Trustee Murphy, did you have a proposal in regards to what you were looking at, or was it just your concerns?
So yeah, so what I would ask for is direction on how the trustees want to handle when we receive correspondence that in and of itself the message is appropriate, but the sender of the message is controversial for our organization to be publishing something from them. So, because right now the chair doesn't have that direction.
So maybe we can ask Director Daly this, because we are publicly funded, so I don't think that we can censor who sends in communication. I don't think that we can do that. However, what we can say is we won't include anything that's detrimental or inappropriate, especially when it comes to our students, staff, or ratepayers. But I don't know that we can say you're not allowed to hand in communication. I think that might actually be a challenge from the ministry. Director Daly, do you think you can?
Well, I don't know if I could give you a definitive answer. I think there would be, I would think there'd be a difference in terms of what our responsibility is to our own stakeholders and an outside organization. You know, anybody can submit anything. Ultimately, the chair and vice chair, and in consultation with me, if it's something that's inappropriate, derogatory, inflammatory, we'll deny it or send it back to the writer and say, you know, if you can change it, we can accept it, and if you can't, we're not going to accept it. To say to an organization, we don't accept your correspondence because of the organization you are, I think we probably could do that. It's just it's a little bit difficult determining who those organizations are and are not.
I think that's what Trustee Agnew was saying is it's not, and I think you hit it on the point, which is it's not the sender, it's the content of what is being sent. And you being able to, in consultation with the chair, look at it if it is defamatory or derogatory, sending it back, exactly like you said, and saying you need to revise it or we're not going to include it in correspondence.
Yeah, I also do see the point of, and I don't want to think of an organization, but you know, there probably are organized groups out there that if we receive correspondence from them, every one of us would say there's no way we want that in a package because it doesn't reflect anything any of us believes in. But again, that would probably be around racist, inflammatory, derogatory sort of comments. So maybe that's a bit of a moot point.
I think that we probably all have a consensus that that would be derogatory and inflammatory if that was the group that they represented. Trustee Murphy, does that kind of, do you still think that there needs to be a change in regards to that?
Yeah, like in the last 2 to 3 weeks, I've had complaints from, if you want to call it, both ends of the spectrum on not the content of what we published, but the where it came from. So whatever we decide is fine with me. I just want people to be aware that we're looking, if we're looking strictly at content, that's it. It's just content. And then if people complain, then that's the message I send out, is the reason is that we don't censor where it comes from. We just look at the message. And if that's what we're saying, that's fine. I just need that direction, which we don't have right now.
And I think that's why this is here. So this is that direction. So
okay.
May I make a comment?
Because currently you don't have direction.
Right.
Right. Okay. So moving on to the next person, we've got Trustee Duart. You're in lineup.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I like the idea of having the correspondence received on Friday to be included in the package, for the simple reason that it's also for us, when we look at the correspondence, we look at the package, we read everything in that. So I'd like to move, or if required, or put a suggestion on the table for it to be on a Friday. Correspondence received on no later than Friday shall be put in the board meeting package.
Can I just ask a question about that, Trustee Duart?
Sure.
And I meant to ask this of Trustee Murphy as well, is
sure.
if we get the agenda, the draft agenda on the Tuesday, but our ratepayers and our parents don't see it until Friday. So how do they even know that there's an issue that they want to write in about if they don't see the agenda package? How does that give them an opportunity to give feedback?
Yeah, at the same time, Madam Chair, the receiving it just before the meeting is not correct too. Because
right, but we don't respond to correspondence. It's to be included. We don't respond to correspondence. It's just for it to be included in the agenda package. Doesn't mean we have to respond to it by the Tuesday. It just means that it goes into the correspondence. So I could see if it was a delegation or something that required a response. I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, so Monday, maybe Monday, not Tuesday. I don't know. Trustee.
It does say it is Monday at 3 o'clock.
Monday.
So it's the day before at 3 o'clock.
I think Trustee Zanota is suggesting Monday at 10 a.m. I'm good with that actually. Earlier, you know what, we need to read that. So I don't know. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
Madam Chair, could I comment on
yep.
that? Okay, great. Thank you. I would agree that I would agree that with what Trustee O'Hearn-Zanota, and that's what I had said previously, whether or not it needs to be like a 9 o'clock in the morning piece on the Monday before, recognizing that obviously we get our board packages, we want to read everything that's through, that's being put through, but the whole idea behind these types of policies is to ensure that our stakeholders and ratepayers have an opportunity to communicate with us on things that they're concerned about, and we know that they want to have those included in the board package. So, while I do agree that, we'd like to see them on the Friday, as Trustee Guzzo said, they don't even get to see the board package until it's published on the Friday. So if we can give them, the weekend to review it and send in their letter, by 10 a.m. or 9 or 10 a.m. on the Monday before the meeting, I think that would just it'd be fair to the person putting the package together for the board meeting on the Tuesday, and I think it'd be fair to our stakeholders and our ratepayers. That's my comment on that.
Okay, so we hear 10 a.m. and Trustee Duart, I heard you say the 10 a.m. on the Monday, it's not going to say Monday because that's assuming that the meeting is on a Tuesday. So it's the day before at 10 a.m.
Yes, I think it's
So we
reasonable.
can, okay. Is
Thank you.
anybody against making that change?
I am, Madam Chair. I think with Trustee Agnew and with what you've been saying as well, it just Monday at 10 a.m. again, it's, you know, the weekend is busy with family. You have an idea, I want to write a letter, and maybe you need on Monday to go to work, or you also need some time to write that letter. And it just gives an opportunity to our ratepayers to be heard. It's submitted in the package. I think 3 p.m. gives enough time for our secretary, the administrative secretary, to organize that. And I think we really need to allow that extra time.
Okay, thank you.
I'm
So we've got
against as
one.
well, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Trustee DeRosa is opposed. Anybody else opposed to making the change to 10?
I am, or Trustee O'Brien.
Trustee O'Brien. So 3 opposed. So the consensus looks like it's, we'll make the change to no later than 10 a.m. Okay. Next in the chat, we've got Trustee DeRosa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a comment.
Madam Chair, I had a follow-up on, sorry.
Sorry about that, Trustee DeRosa. My
I'll go back in the
apologies.
chat. I'll go back.
No, it's okay. Trustee Dewar, go ahead. Your follow-up question.
So my question was actually not related to this, but you know what? I'll go back in the queue. Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Trustee DeRosa, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, I'd like a point of clarification with regards to the issue that Trustee Murphy was addressing. Is it the content of the letter that's a problem, or the source of where the letter is coming from, Trustee Murphy?
It's the source. So we've had a couple of organizations that sent letters in which were offensive to other people, constituents. And yeah, it's not the content of the letter at all. It's what the perception of the organization represents from the source.
Okay, so thank you for that clarification. I would submit to you then that whether somebody is offended by an organization sending in a letter that is perfectly acceptable in its content becomes a very slippery slope that we go down. And I'm talking from both sides of, organizations will lie on both sides of the spectrum and come from anywhere. So I would submit to you that the judgment is really about the offensiveness of the content of the letter and not the organization that is sending it. And if
that is where we landed on, Trustee DeRosa. That is where what it says under that bullet.
Madam Chair, I would like to finish without interruption, and I have the floor. So if you will allow me the respect of finishing my comment, then I will cede to the order of the queue.
No need to yell.
Trustee,
I'm not yelling. I have a hard voice.
No, Trustee DeRosa. You're actually yelling.
I don't need you to come to the defense. So.
Trustee DeRosa? Do you have a question, Trustee DeRosa? We've moved on.
Madam Chair, I would now the muting is no longer technologically driven. The muting is purposely driven. And whether I have a loud voice, but I am speaking respectfully, I do not deserve to be muted, as other members of this board. And I will make an issue out of that, of why I'm being purposely muted and not allowing my constituents to listen to what I have to say, because it happens not to agree with certain individuals.
Trustee DeRosa, but please,
Yes.
I would ask you to stop making accusations.
I'm
And
not
I would
making an
ask that you
accusation. I was
that
muted.
was actually an accusation. No, you actually made an
No,
accusation.
Madam
saying-
Chair, I
you made
was
an
muted.
Trustee DeRosa, I'm going to stop you now. One, we're not going to raise our voices. Two, you did make an accusation in regards to
Madam
somebody
Chair, I did
muting
not.
you because
I
I'm
did
speaking
not.
now.
Those are your
That
value
you were
judgments,
muted
Madam
because
Chair.
that you were
Madam
muted
Chair.
because somebody didn't agree with you, and that
Madam
is
Chair,
uncalled for.
I was
Would you
muted
get to your
again
point, Trustee
intentionally.
DeRosa? Trustee DeRosa, get to your point.
My point is that if we start making value judgments of which organizations to receive letters from, we are going down a slippery slope. Because the point is that regardless of the fact that the content of their letter may be perfectly acceptable, just because it comes from organization ABC does not give us the right to close or receive input. We are here as an organization responsible in the law to listen to our constituents, no matter what they have to say, so long as it's respectful. So I vehemently oppose this suggestion of being selective on who we're going to get comments from and who we're not. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So Trustee DeRosa, to your point, if you had been paying attention to when we dealt with that, that is actually the opposite of what we're doing. What we talked about is not said.
I clarified
I have the floor now, Trustee DeRosa.
Well,
what the correspondence says is it talks about containing inappropriate, derogatory, inflammatory, disparaging statements. It has nothing to do with who the sender was. Thank you. Moving on to the next person. So we've got Trustee Agnew. No, I will. You know what, Trustee DeRosa, I'm not.
Madam Chair, I asked a question of Mr. Murphy specifically, and he said it's not the content that's the problem, it's the source it's coming from. Let's be absolutely clear. Thank you very much.
Trustee Agnew, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. I wanted to agree with Trustee Murphy that there were some concerns with respect to who sent it, but I will also say that I heard from a number of stakeholders and ratepayers that there was concern about the actual content that was in the correspondence. Some people felt that it was hate mail, it was extremely derogatory in some of the things that were said. And so I believe that it wasn't just the group, but it was also the content. But I think that we can resolve that by what we have put here. Because at the end of the day, what we don't want to see is we don't want to see wording or comments or opinion that is contrary to any of the things we've listed here, or further to what Trustee Carabella said that, may be contrary to, some of the teachings. So I believe that this piece adequately handles that, and hopefully that would provide some direction to the chair on what to include and what not to include.
Thank you, Trustee Agnew. Trustee Ahern-Janota, we haven't heard from you, so I'm going to put you in the queue.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say that, our chair and our vice chair were elected to represent us. They are individual trustees, but they are the head of the board at this particular time. And our Secretary Daly, I fully have my trust that they will be able to decide whether the content is derogatory or not. So I think with this policy and with our three individuals at the helm of the ship right now, I think they'll be able to decide what's good content and what's not. So I just really wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Ahern-Janota. So do we have any other points on this? Trustee Murphy, I think, and Trustee Dewart, we've gotten on your couple of points there. So we're moving to the 10 a.m. Sorry, I'm having some. No, you're not in the feed, Trustee DeRosa. There's other people still ahead of you. So Trustee O'Brien, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, actually, I wanted to refer back to a previous point about correspondence I saw to Halton, so I can wait until this point is resolved before I go to it.
I think we're actually done with this point, Trustee O'Brien. So we're on to the next item. So you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to refer back to application scope. You pointed out, I mentioned the fact that a lot of correspondence is coming outside of Halton, even outside the province. And I agree with totally about applications scope what you said. This policy applies to parents, guardians, students, ratepayers, organizations, or members of the broader community. I thought maybe just to tighten this up so that there's no doubt about this, if we could put the word Halton in front of community. That's why it's clear. If I get a letter from Winnipeg, well, actually if I get a letter from even Mississauga, it's clear I don't really need to respond to a ratepayer over there. So I'm just suggesting it. I don't know how the other trustees feel. So again, just one word, Halton in front of the word community.
Just for clarification though, Trustee O'Brien, this is for parents, this is for correspondence requested to be included in board packages. So,
Madam Chair, it's just that it does refer to correspondence to individual trustees too. And
right. You're right.
Just
okay.
to tighten it up,
So,
I mean, just a suggestion.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying and I understand. I'm wondering how we would enforce that, and administratively if that would be onerous on whoever is in charge of going through the correspondence.
I guess it wasn't. I guess I'm not looking for much of enforcement. Just to respond to you, as much as kind of a guideline for trustees as to what needs to be addressed. I mean, I'm thinking of Trustee Murphy getting 1,500 emails. Not that you can tell right away who's from outside the area, but I mean, I had to go through a lot of emails too. I'm still trying to get to some of them. There's quite a few, but just kind of a nice guide post for me and the other trustees is if it's outside of Halton, I really don't need to respond so I can concentrate just on our constituents. Just a suggestion. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, I'm not sure how much more tighter we could make that. Did you have a suggestion? Where did you make that suggestion, Trustee O'Brien?
Right before the word community, just put the word Halton.
Under applications and scope.
Yes.
Broader Halton community. Do we have any objection to adding that into into this?
I would object.
So Trustee Carabella objects. Anybody, any other objections? Okay, well, I think we have. Yeah.
Could I ask, I mean, through you, Madam Chair, could I ask why Trustee Carabella would object to that? I'm just curious, that's all.
Sure, Trustee Carabella, if you can just give us a reason why you object to that.
Thank you. Well, you know, I just think that it can be open up to other people, things that we've seen the correspondence that has come in, and we know that things that get decided at our board have repercussions, and people can write to us if we choose not to respond to every single one that comes outside of the community. We can choose that and just answer our own constituents. But I don't think we have to really limit people sending in letters, things, so.
I don't know that his change would limit Trustee Carabella, people sending in letters. I think it's just a matter of having to respond, I think is more of what Trustee O'Brien, correct me if I'm wrong, Trustee O'Brien, is your point?
Madam Chair, that was my intention, more the response rather than the intake.
Okay. Okay, so is there any other objection other than Trustee Carabella? Okay, so we'll make that change as well. Thank you, Trustee O'Brien. Moving on, Trustee O'Hearn-Jornalta, I have you back in the queue again. Are you good?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, we've got Trustee Agnew.
I'm okay, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Trustee Carabella, you have some change.
Good, thank you. I was just confirming that we did put in the second bullet under correspondence addressed to staff and trustees, if everyone was agreeing to that we say there when correspondence is addressed to the director and to the member of or a member of staff? Is that where we were going to include the director?
We can. Do we have any objection to that, to adding director in point number 2 under point 3, correspondence addressed to staff and trustees? So maybe it should then say correspondence addressed to the director, staff, and trustees, or the director and or staff and trustees.
Correct.
Do we have any objection to that? Okay, so we'll make those changes. Trustee Carabella, thank you. Do you have a follow-up?
I do. Well, I still would like to, maybe we can do a vote then, because I do want to add something about what Trustee Murphy brought up about the sender. We received a PD session and we learned about our denominational rights, and that we have to reserve the right to restrict when something is in fact against the tenets, in particular the tenets of the Catholic Church. So I agree derogatory, anything racist is completely wrong and shouldn't be allowed. In the same way, if something is coming from somewhere that's completely anti-Catholic, maybe they can send it, but we can choose not to publish it. So I think for our community and what we are, a Catholic school board, I think that is important to have in there.
Okay, so where you're suggesting that under, Marta, can we scroll down?
I'm suggesting that
right there, under bullet correspondence containing any appropriate derogatory, you're suggesting that it in regards to the Catholic tenets was, I think, can you be more specific on what wording you're looking to put in?
Yeah, organizations whose stated mandate is antithetical to the tenets of the Catholic faith will not be included in the board agenda package. Okay. I mean, yeah.
Is anybody opposed to this?
I'm opposed.
Okay, Trustee Agnew's opposed.
I just have a clarifying question. Trustee Carabella, what did you say? Did you say fetico?
Oh, antithetical. It means in opposition. It means contrary. It's I mean, we can use another word.
No, I just didn't know what it meant, to be honest.
Yeah.
Transparent. So thank you for that definition. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So organizations antithetical to the tenets of the Catholic Church. I have a question. Are we defining all of the tenets of the Catholic Church, and who's interpreting what isn't against and what isn't against? Trustee Carabella?
Oh, thank you to you. Thank you. I can answer that question, and I would say that something against life, like we had the Dying with Dignity, they advocate killing people and assisted suicide. And we had a clear indication of that from the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops, that is against the teachings of the Catholic Church. Euthanasia is against the teachings of the Catholic Church, the tenet. So that's one example. So I don't know if Director Daly has other examples of organizations that would try and influence our community in a way that's against our tenets of the Church.
So I'm going to ask this question, Trustee Carabella, because I don't understand who's going to make that determining factor and what's going to define what's appropriate and what isn't. So if we're talking about any groups that represent any of the 2S LGBTQ+ groups, would that be considered against the Catholic tenets?
Well, we have the Catholic teachings on that. I'm not going to answer that right now. You could ask.
Well, I think it's important. You're proposing it for this policy. I think it's important to know the changes that you're proposing, what they exactly mean. I can't agree to put something into a policy that I don't know what it means.
Well, we can take it to a vote then.
No, Trustee Carabella, I'm asking you to clarify for me what it means. I can't take it to a vote until I know what it means. I can't vote on it myself if I don't know what.
Are you able to take questions as well, Madam Chair, on this matter?
Yep, absolutely.
You get your answer, of course.
Anybody who has a question. Yep. I'm Trustee Carabella, do you have an answer for my question?
I don't want to
Before I move on to any other questions?
No.
Okay, so you don't want to comment. Okay, does anybody else have any questions in regards to the proposed changes Trustee Carabella has made?
I do.
Madam Chair?
My hand's up, Madam Chair.
My hand's up as well.
Okay, so let's start with Trustee O'Brien, Trustee O'Brien, Trustee Agnew, and then Trustee Dewar.
Thank you, through Madam Chair, and thank you, Trustee Carabell, for putting that forward. And Madam Chair, I think you asked an excellent question. Who defines that? I mean, I think even over the last month, that question has been really coming up, and a lot of us are struggling with that as well. I agree. The tenets of the Catholic Church, some are more core, some are a bit less to the core. I certainly would agree that the ones that are core, like life, sanctity of life, have to be defended. The ones that are not so central to the faith, perhaps that has to be debated by us. I'm not sure. A caveat could put it in there. But I think it's good to have some kind of bullet in there to speak to that. That's all I have to say. So I would support it, but possibly with some explanation as well would be appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Trustee O'Brien. Trustee Agnew.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So I'm just going to address the elephant in the room as it feels, and this is no disrespect at all to Trustee Carabella, but this feels a lot like the sanctity of life language all over again. And my fear here is that I agree. We need to be very careful. And we look at the Dying with Dignity letter, and I know how that could be very offensive to people reading that letter who are, opposed to euthanasia. But if we have wording like that, that's in here, what happens if we get correspondence from, Joe Brandt in the research department about something, and it turns out that the research department does research on XYZ? What if this had to do with something to do with vaccines, and it was someone about, I know I'm going down that rabbit hole, but that's the reality of what can happen, right? Is that it can spiral into something else because there's someone who's affiliated with something who's affiliated with something else. So I think we just need to be very careful on that. And again, who makes that determination? So are we speaking specifically about some of the pride organizations? I know you're not comfortable answering, and that's okay, but that's where my mind goes. That's what's happening at this moment. That's where the big discussions have been. And so does that say that we can't accept correspondence to be included in our package because PFLAG Halton sends that in? That's concerning to me. So, again, to what end is that wording? Where does that draw the line? And again, who makes that determination? Because as Trustee O'Brien said, some things seem to be a little bit more stricter than other things, and who's going to make that decision? Is that up to the unilateral decision of the chair and the director of education at that time? I don't know how transparent that is. So I would be opposed to that for that reason. I believe the wording that we have in there is more than adequate to ensure that we are not seeing any language or any comment or opinion that would be contrary to our beliefs.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Agnew. Trustee Dewar, do you have a question?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I just want to stay focused on what we are trying to achieve. It's correspondence to board meeting. So my question here was, can I hear the wording again? Because could we type the wording in the chat box? I just want to digest that, Madam Chair.
Sure, Trustee Carabella, I have that any correspondence from organizations that are antithetical to the tenets of the Catholic faith will not be included. Is that correct?
I think whose stated mandate is it. So it's not something just perceived, but that they have to have it in their mandate.
Okay, I'm just trying to type it. So sorry, any organizations that, what did you say again, that are, they're standing?
Whose stated mandate is antithetical to the tenets of the Catholic faith will not be included in the board agenda package.
Bear with me, folks, it's coming right now. Okay, I think I've captured it. Trustee Carabella, have a look at that and let me know.
That's correct. Thank you.
Okay. Trustee Duart, do you see it?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Did you have any questions in regards to it, Trustee Duart?
No, I just wanted to see the wording. Thanks.
Okay. Is there any other question for what Trustee Carabella has put forward? Trustee DeRosa, is that your hand up?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to reiterate that there are two sides to this coin. And so long as the content of the letter or the correspondence that is being sent in is acceptable by the judgment of the chair and the secretary, I think that banning entire organizations is a bad idea, no matter on which side of the coin this is. Thank you.
Okay, so Trustee DeRosa, then I would take, okay, thank you. Director Daly, you have a comment?
Thank you. If I could, Madam Chair, I think the language as it is, correspondence containing any inappropriate, etc., is probably all-encompassing enough. I think that whoever the chair, vice chair, and director is at any given time would seriously consider all of those elements. And ultimately, correspondence to the board, although it's made public in the board package, it's correspondence for trustees. So they can weigh any particular piece of correspondence in any way that they want to. So they might see correspondence of a particular viewpoint that will not impact their decision. They may see correspondence that might let them think a different way. But I'm certainly sure that individual trustees can make that judgment call on their own. And in the current process we use, is it possible that we get it wrong sometimes? Yeah, perhaps it is, but certainly done with no malice or ill intent. Probably, on the side of let's hear from as many people as we can, within reason, within certain parameters, and then trustees ultimately will make their decision.
Thank you, Director Daly. Trustee O'Brien, did you see it? I apologize. I know you said point of privilege.
I just can't see it yet, okay?
Okay, it is in the chat box. Maybe scroll down. Maybe you're...
Okay, I see it. I have a comment, but I'll wait till I'm recognized.
You can be recognized now because I think everybody else has had.
Okay. I hear what Trustee DeRosa is saying and Director Daly, and I agree partially. I'm going back to our vision statement, and that it does say that we are distinctly Catholic, and I can't get that out of my head because if we are distinctly Catholic, I think we do have to comment on something, and I appreciate Trustee DeRosa's love of democracy and openness. At the same time, Trustee Agnew said something about core statements and ones that are not so core. And I'm wondering if Trustee Carabello would mind if we did put the word core in here, any correspondence from organizations whose stated mandate is antithetical to the core tenets of the Catholic faith. And I'm talking about life issues. I'm talking about recognizing that Jesus is the Son of God. Like those are like those core issues that there's just no debate on. The other ones like that we've been looking at lately, which are more debatable, I think we can receive correspondence from them. So I'm asking here, Trustee Carabello, if she would put in the word core there. Thank you to you, Madam Chair.
I think she's responded yes to it. Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, Trustee Carabello.
That's correct. Yes, that's a good addition.
I would go for that, and I'll be honest with you. I don't think letters from the LBG community could be refused under that. We can still get their correspondence and put in the board package for sure. I don't see that issue being a core issue. Death and dying, I did have a problem with that. I think that does. So that's where I stand on that, and I would go for this, and I think that would satisfy distinctly Catholic in our vision statement. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Trustee O'Brien. Trustee Murphy, you
have. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, it's challenging. We have challenges on both ends of this, so it's to evaluate. So evaluating the content of a message is I'm not going to use the term easy. There's still gray areas. So we typically look at it. I know when Vice Chair and the Secretary and I get together, we try to not to censor. We try to be sensitive to different needs, but there's always a balance, and you're always weighing that. With, as Director Daly said, with the knowledge that we're not lemmings, we're not just going to follow what somebody says, and it's an opinion, and you don't have to agree with an opinion. The reason why I brought it up, because we're getting challenged on not the content, but the group, and I just wanted to get a clear understanding from the trustees where their will was, and as Trustee DeRosa had pointed out, the content of the message is critical, and the organization, it is difficult, and it is a slippery slope if we start looking at the organization. So yeah, it's tough. These probably are extremes. We know it's going to happen a few times a year. And as long as now that we've had this discussion, we understand the spirit behind it, then it's something that I think is easier to defend. And I think if we make it more rigid, it becomes something bigger and a level of censorship that is harder to manage, if that makes sense.
Okay. Thank you, Trustee Murphy. I'm going to give the floor to Trustee O'Hearn-Jornota, and then we're going to try to move on because it is 9:21, and I think there might be some other points in here. Trustee O'Hearn-Jornota.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair, and to Secretary Daly, thank you for the respect that you've given us as trustees to be able to disseminate the information that comes forward as correspondence. come on, let's face it, everyone, we're not making decisions in a vacuum. Adding correspondence that has the appropriate content as decided by our 3 individuals are more than enough. I think that I'm going to have to agreeably disagree with Trustee Carabella, and adding that rigidity to this policy, I will not be in favor of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee O'Brien, did you have any clarifying questions on this?
Okay, a clarifying comment and a question to you, Madam Chair. I voted for our chair, and I fully believe that he is capable of making this discerning issue, and I fully support our director in discerning what should be put into correspondence. But I see that bullet as a guideline for them. And I trust them, whatever this decision they make. I think it's a good thing to put in. And I think it might be wise, just suggesting, Madam Chair, to vote on this. Because I think if we vote on it right now, we'll put it to rest. So when it goes to the board meeting, it won't have to come up again. Just my opinion. And I think unless people want to speak to it, I just ask you if you would take it to a vote on this one amendment. Thank you.
So Trustee O'Brien, we already actually did take a consensus on that bullet point. Now we're dealing with the addition that Trustee Carabella is doing, but we can actually take a recorded vote on the amendments that Trustee Carabella is with the addition of your word core.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's what I'm asking you.
Okay, so let's do that. So we're going to start with Trustee DeRosa.
Madam Chair, just clarifying.
Sorry.
We are voting on.
We're voting on Trustee Carabella's proposal, which limits. Hold on, trying to scroll up here because it's not. So the change that she's proposed, which is any correspondence from organizations whose stated mandate is antithetical to the core tenets of the Catholic faith, will not be included in the board agenda package. That's what we're voting on. Okay, so Trustee DeRosa.
Madam Chair, I'm open and democratic, so I vote against.
Thank you. Trustee Dewar?
I'm against adding this.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Antomasi?
Against.
Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Murphy?
Opposed.
Trustee O'Brien?
In favor.
Trustee O'Hearn-Chernotta?
Opposed.
Trustee Kelly?
Opposed.
Trustee Goubert?
I'm opposed.
Trustee Agnew?
Opposed.
I am also opposed. Okay, so we'll move on to, is there any other proposed changes to this or comments on this policy? Trustee Dewart, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, my question was I went into the queue earlier. So under applications and scope, if you go to the top, the second bullet there, ministry memorandums are also included there. So my question was to actually Trustee Agnew and Trustee Carabella. We get ministry memorandums through the chair or through the director's office, or maybe OCST director, regional director. So those memorandums are specifically marked to trustees or to the chair. Now, if the ministry wants to make it public, then they would release it themselves. So my question here is, why are we including those memorandums in this correspondence package when there is no request from the ministry to put it in public? So I would suggest to remove that, because that's not the regular correspondence we are talking about in this policy.
We can have Director Daly comment on this, but if I'm not mistaken, Trustee Dewart, I believe when PPMs are done in memorandums, they actually are public. You just have to look for them. But maybe Director Daly, can you respond to that?
Well, Madam Chair, just to clarify, so are we talking about the PPMs, or are we talking about the memos that come from the ministry or to us? to the director and chair?
I think all of them are. I think they go out to, I think the ones that aren't to be included are marked confidential. So, but Director Daly, maybe you can clarify. Maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. I had a similar, or my question was on a similar point in section 3, correspondence addressed to staff and trustees. The second bullet says all Ministry of Ed memos or communications addressed to the director, chair, or trustees that are not confidential shall be published in the board agenda meeting package. So yeah, there's all kinds of things we get from the ministry that ultimately are public. They're on the ministry website. As Trustee Guzzo said, you just have to go and find them. I guess my question is, what's the practical sort of reason to add, for example, a 400-page technical paper into the board agenda package, or 500 pages of memo information? I guess I'm not sure what the reason behind that would be, and if in fact trustees do want to actually do that, I would suggest we just provide the link as opposed to printing off 500 and 600 page packages on a, not on a consistent basis, but several times a year.
I think that's a good point, Director Daly. Agnew and Trustee Carabella, would you be okay with if it says, if it is that large, that the hyperlink be included to it as opposed to the full?
I'll let Trustee Carabella, I mean, I'm okay with it. I let Trustee Carabella speak to this because I think this was actually wording that had come from Trustee Carabella on this point. Perhaps she has more to say on that.
Yeah, I don't have much more to say. I do think adding a link, of course, that's awesome. That's a good idea, instead of a 500-page notice. But what I was trying to get across with this is that we're just trying to make things very easy for our parents to see what the ministry is sending us, and that it's posted in yet another place, and it is correspondence, and it is part of what we do as trustees, and also parents will know that we're aware of it as well. So I think that's, for me, it's to make it very parent friendly and easy access, and a link is good. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Director Daly, you had is that possible? And then we'll go back to you, Trustee Dort, because I know you raised this question.
Yeah, I guess it's possible. Again, I certainly would not consider Ministry of Education memos to be correspondence to the board. Their direction to the board and how to carry out policies or how to implement certain things. That's up to staff to implement. We do try and share that with trustees through board reports. I just can't imagine the volume of that communication being of use. I shouldn't say being of use, because obviously there's people that would be interested in it. I guess I don't understand where that's coming from. I don't think it leads to any sort of transparency, but that's, I mean, obviously, the will of the trustees is
point of order, Madam Chair.
Yeah. What is can you state what your point of order is?
My point of order stems from the fact that all communication that comes from the ministry would be construed as operational. As such, we have no jurisdiction in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Antomasi. I don't know if it's a point of order as opposed to just a technical issue. So, Trustee Antomasi, uncalled for. So Trustee Agnew and Trustee Carabella, I'm gonna because Trustee Dewar has raised it, and Director Daly has raised in regards to the memo and whether or not all of the memos would be required to be shared in that sense. Would you take it into consideration?
I have a question then. So are these memos, Director Daly, posted somewhere else on our website or somewhere where their parents can easily access them? Because as you say, it is a bit of transparency to have to know what the ministry has asked us to do. It's operational, perhaps in nature, but a lot of it is also will impact our governing. So
yeah, that's why we would share that information at the board table with trustees. Certainly, sometimes the ministry does, or the minister does request that memos go out to parents. So they're sent to boards and we're asked to consider distributing, whether it goes to every parent or via social media. During the last year, when we've had messaging or memos from the ministry regarding school closures or return to school planning, we did a bit of a combination of sending it out directly to parents or posting on the return to school part of our website. But as I said, we get dozens, literally dozens and dozens of memoranda from the ministry weekly to all of our departments. And I just can't imagine what value that would be to continually post all of that information.
Okay, thank you. Duly noted. Trustee Dewart, do you have?
Madam Chair, I'd like to just first is just a comment. If you put a link, Madam Chair, that link down the road can move. So ministry can move their pages around. The link is pretty much useless. It's maybe okay for some time. Second thing, Madam Chair, I'd like to remove that item under the first part, that's application and scope. Ministry memorandums are included. I'd like to remove that bullet and also correct the part which Director Daly mentioned further down in the policy. Director Daly, can you point it out, please, if you don't mind?
I think that was the appendix part, right? Where it went into the definition of it.
No, the point that I was speaking to, it's in section 3, the second bullet. All Ministry of Ed memorandum or communications addressed to the director shall be published. I mean, I don't know. Again, I'm not 100% sure of what the overall intent of adding that would be, but it could be all Ministry of Education communications that are asked to be shared with the public. We would share them with the public anyway, but if we want to put those as correspondence, that might make some sense. Those are a little fewer and far between. So when the minister says, hey, consider sharing this with your parents, as opposed to, like I said, we got 7, 8 B memos in the last week regarding the intricacies of the budget. That's a lot of information. And again, I think I would guess for people that are really that interested in it, they're probably going to the finance site on the ministry anyway.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Director Daly. So Trustee Dewart, so your proposal then is to remove those 2 pieces?
Can I speak to that?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Speak to Trustee Dewart's proposal?
To what Director Daly said, to acknowledge that, saying that it would just be the ones that they asked to be shared with parents. I think that is a good point.
Okay, so I think what Director Daly is saying is that's already happening, but okay, we can, but let's deal with Trustee Dewart's. Trustee Dewart's got on the table that he wants to remove it anyway. So let's deal with that first. So Trustee Dewart, is there any conversation in regards around Trustee Dewart's proposal to remove those 2 parts?
Madam Chair, point of order, you need a seconder.
Madam Chair, it's not a board meeting.
Yeah, I know it's not a board meeting, and we haven't handled any of this as with a seconder at this point. So we've dealt with this on consensus. So is there anybody up? Is there any conversation or any question in regards to?
I'm opposed.
Didn't ask you, Trustee Intomasi. So
I'm
is there any
entitled to
Trustee Antomasi, you're out of order. Is there
I think
any,
you're out of order,
is there
Madam
any
Chair. I
question?
don't think you know what you're doing.
Is it, I'm sorry, Trustee Antomasi.
That's a point of order.
I'm sorry, Trustee Antomasi, do you want to repeat what you just said? I'm going to ask you to repeat what you just said. And I'm going to ask for an apology for an offside comment. Trustee Dewart has proposed to remove this. Is there any conversation or is there any question to Trustee Dewart's request to remove these points out of the policy? Okay, so is there anybody, I'll take this to a recorded vote because we're looking to remove. Trustee Agnew?
I'm in favor of removing it.
Trustee DeRosa?
I'm opposed.
Trustee Dewart?
In favor.
Trustee Carabella?
Opposed.
Trustee Murphy?
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien?
Point of clarification, could you just please point that out again? I had to step away for a minute.
So Trustee Dewart had proposed to remove the memos from the ministry.
Okay.
Because they would be, the point of it was that there would be so many and that they are available to the public.
I'm in favor.
Trustee O'Hearn-Chernota?
I'm in favor.
Trustee Kelly?
In favor.
Trustee Goubert?
Opposed.
Trustee Antomasi?
Abstain.
Okay, so we will be removing those pieces from the correspondence piece. Sorry, just making note. Thank you, Trustee Dewart. Moving on to Trustee Carabella.
Thank you. I had one more addition. Sorry this is taking so long. That sometimes people want to give correspondence to the committees of the board, such as the Policy Committee, the CPIC Committee, or SEAC. And we don't have that provision. So I would like to suggest that if people do want to submit correspondence to the committees, following all the same requirements for submitting to the Board of Trustees, that they can do so. Because maybe there's a topic they would like to write to the Board of Trustees on in those particular committees.
Okay. So Trustee Carabell, the only thing I would think we need to be mindful of is that for CPIC and SEAC, that those are all volunteer roles. So when dealing with increasing their agendas, I think that might be something we should consult with them. And that's just my opinion, but we'll open it up to other people on the table as well. Is there any questions in regards to Trustee Carabella's request for addition to committees for correspondence?
I can just speak to that just for a moment. I like your suggestion, Trustee Guzzo, that maybe that's something we can ask them without actually putting it right now and having a discussion about it right now. Thank you, because it's not even at the first reading. So
yeah, and I think you know what the other thing is too, Trustee Carabella. I think that's something that they can do when they do their terms of reference.
Thank you.
So we'll hold on that, Trustee Carabella, and ask them to give feedback. Is that what we're looking to do?
Absolutely, there's time, and I think that's a good idea.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you. Moving on to Trustee O'Brien.
Thank you, through Madam Chair. It's a small point, and I don't know if this is the time to bring it up, but I did see one piece of correspondence who claimed in their name the initials HCDSB. And I know our intellectual property policy says that they can only use that name if it's in keeping with our board. I'm not sure they were given permission to use that name. I just saw one, but I think it might be worth mentioning. I mean, if we get correspondence with that, or we see correspondence like that, should we just ignore it? Do we want to put it in our correspondence policy? Because I know that the name HCDSB is a name, our initials that only belong to us. I don't know, perhaps Ms. Swindon can speak to that because she's our communications person. It's not in the policy, but I did see one piece of correspondence with those initials. I just wanted to bring it up. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Trustee O'Brien. I think that might be something separate to this policy. I think that might be a copyright issue as opposed to this correspondence policy. Are you okay if we maybe put that to the side and we can address that with Ms. Swindon afterwards?
Certainly, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. That being said, it doesn't look like we have anybody else in the feed. So we will take this to a vote with all of the changes for it to go to the board to go through for its first reading. I'll start with Trustee Ian Tomasi. Okay, Trustee Ian Tomasi, are you there?
I am here. I am against.
Opposed? Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Murphy?
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien?
I think without that bullet by Trustee Carabella about the core issues, I think I'm going to be opposed. Thank you.
Trustee O'Hearn-Chernota?
In favor.
Trustee Kelly?
In favor.
Trustee Goubert?
In favor.
Trustee Agnew?
In favor.
Trustee DeRosa?
I'm opposed, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Trustee Duart?
In favor.
And I'm also in favor. So the policy will be brought to the board meeting next week for its first reading.
Madam Chair, what's the process after this? Just to juggle my memory.
So if it's approved by the board, then it'll go out to stakeholders for its first reading. And then Director Daly, help me out here. It's 3 readings, correct?
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair, it'll go to the board for first reading and then for stakeholder feedback and then back to the policy committee, back to board again, and then for a third reading as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Does that clarify it for you, Trustee Duart?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. Moving on to item 4.3. Just give me one moment, but can I just have a minute? Just excuse me for just 1 minute. So Trustee Agnew had to leave unexpectedly, so she's asked that we defer the correspondence, not the correspondence, to item 4.3 to the next meeting. So I have, if there's no objection to it, I would agree to that, considering that it was her item to bring forward and she has an emergency that she needs to deal with. So moving on to item 4.4.
I object, Madam Chair. Can you please call a vote?
So I'm going to call a vote to allow that that the item brought forward by Trustee Agnew due to a family emergency, that she had to step out unexpectedly, that it be postponed to the next policy meeting.
So,
Trustee DeRosa?
Point of clarification, I just put a motion on the floor to deal with this particular matter. Are you asking to amend the agenda, or are you asking to drop the item from the agenda? It's one and the same. So could we word it properly?
Trustee Intomasi, this isn't a board meeting. This is a policy committee meeting.
Our bylaws 1.2 state unequivocally that committees shall use the same procedures and policies and bylaws as we use at the board. I refer you to 1.2.
Thank you, Trustee Intomasi, for always clarifying for us. So that being said, let's have an official vote on excusing and removing this item from the agenda. Those in favor? Trustee DeRosa, or opposed? Are you in favor or opposed?
Madam Chair, can I ask you a question?
Yes. What's your question?
We are 8 out of 9 trustees. Can it not be dealt with?
It can't be dealt with because the person who brought forward the changes had to leave unexpectedly.
Okay. I will abstain, ma'am.
Thank you. Trustee Dewar?
In favor.
Trustee Intomasi?
I will abstain.
Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Murphy?
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien?
In favor.
Trustee O'Hearn-Chernota?
In favor.
Trustee Kelly?
In favor.
Trustee Goubert?
In favor.
I am also in favor. Moving on to item 4.4.
Madam Chair, can you please call the vote?
2 abstentions, the remainder in favor. Anything else, Trustee Intomasi, before I move on? Moving on to item 4.4.
You answered my question. Thank you.
Policy II-29, inclusion and range of placement options for identified exceptional students. So can I have someone move? Sorry, hold on. Just gotta flip. Can I have some, Trustee Dewar moves, seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you, Trustee O'Hearn-Chernota. Superintendent Ballo, so nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well. I miss policy. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. If you could just scroll the screen down a little bit there. Just to the action report. I have a hard copy. I can read it. Okay, there you go. So the purpose this evening is to provide for the consideration of the policy committee revisions made to policy II-29, inclusion and range of placement options for identified exceptional students, as recommended by staff and in consultation with the Special Education Advisory Committee, known as SEAC. Policy II-29, inclusion and range of placement options for identified exceptional students, was last reviewed in May of 2017 and is in keeping with the policy review cycle. The policy was reviewed by staff and in consultation with SEAC members at both the March 22nd and April 19th Special Education Advisory Committee meetings. The associated policies and procedures have been updated with the addition of II-13, Psychoeducation, Psychological Assessment of Individual Students, and II-45, Equity and Inclusive Education. The references have also been revised with several additions, including the Halton Catholic District School Board Special Education Annual Plan. And to align with the current policy template, a definition section was also added. Minor edits have been made throughout the policy to provide consistency and to provide some updated terms to the document. The revised policy is attached for review and consideration by the policy committee, and then the following recommendation is presented for the consideration of the board. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Superintendent Ballo. I'll open up the floor to any questions from trustees. Trustee O'Brien, you have the floor.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, to Superintendent Ballo. Superintendent Ballo, I'm looking at the placement options, the 5 placement options. And specific to the one identification gifted, is in elementary, please correct me if I'm wrong, placement 4 is offered. Is that correct?
That's correct. From grade 5 to 8.
Grade 5 to 8, placement 4 is offered. However, in high school, that is not the case. Is that true?
That's true.
Can you speak to why that is true?
Why it is true? Because
why all of a sudden, is it the demand goes down? Is it because of a logistics problem?
I would say it's a variety of reasons. And we did have a staff report that was presented to the Board of Trustees in 2019. It was a very extensive report.
I remember.
And it did include commentary from special education, from student success, from our AP superintendent at the time as well. So it does have to do with a number of pieces, including the logistics of having enough students that we would be able to offer a fully contained class congregated at secondary. So we did have some conversation at SEAC with respect to that placement option. And we also talked about clustering, which is something that we are in support of. And at that time, through the feedback that we did receive from ABC at both of the SEAC meetings, we did make a commitment to capture the clustering option, which is putting likability peers together when possible, if it works out for the timetable, in our special education plan. And we have subsequently drafted that language. We had a subcommittee, and it was well received, and we'll be sharing that back at SEAC at our May meeting.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Follow up. So would the clustering be a placement 3?
No, clustering is not considered a placement according to the ministry definitions.
Right.
So it's an approach, but it's not a placement.
Okay, Madam Chair, one follow-up question, please.
Sure, you can have a clarifying question, Trustee O'Brien.
Actually, I'd like to direct this question to Superintendent Kroll if he's here.
I don't know that he is.
Then may I direct it to Director Daly? Director Daly, I know the pre-AP math in grade 9 was a bit of a place where some of that gifted need was met. I know AP is not a gifted placement. Will there be a pre-AP math next September?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. Grade 9 math is being de-streamed for September. So other than our locally developed math, all other grade 9 students will be taking the grade 9 de-streamed math. That's our plan.
And follow up, Director Daly, is that a ministry decision about AP pre-math being included in that de-streaming, or is that a board decision?
AP math is not a ministry mandated part of the curriculum, so that would be a board decision. What the ministry mandate is that we offer de-streamed math in grade 9 starting in September.
So we could still have pre-AP math without going against the ministry decision on de-streaming. Is that correct, Director Daly?
We could have de-streamed, we could have a pre-AP math if we believed, I guess I would say, if we believe that was in the spirit and direction of the ministry with regards to de-streaming.
Okay, and Madam Chair, if you'll indulge me, one follow-up question to Stephanie, Director Bell. If I can go back in the queue, though, I don't mind.
This is the last one, Trustee O'Brien, just because there's other people in the feed, okay?
Yeah. Superintendent Beloff, since that is, in my opinion only, so my opinion is pretty drastic change from going from a placement 4 gifted in grade 8 to a clustered in-class support. Do you feel that the pre-AP math would help at least meet some of that need if it was kept?
I don't know that I'm necessarily in a position to be able to answer that, not knowing really what the D-stream model is going to look like, in all fairness. And I think that there's still some more work to be done in that area and further communication.
Okay, thank you, Director Daly and Superintendent Bella.
Thank you, Trustee O'Brien. Trustee Carabella, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was wondering if I'm at SEAC sometimes, and I did get the ABC report. I don't know if all the trustees saw it, so maybe that's something that should be forwarded back. And I wondered, or forwarded to the trustees before this policy goes to a board meeting, but I was wondering if any other of the organizations that sit at SEAC, whether they give some commentary, feedback on this policy?
So to start with the first question, and through you, Madam Chair, the request was made to add the feedback, and it was an internal mechanism through our SEAC committee. We did ask any of the associations who had any feedback on the policy to share it with SEAC. And there was a request made to add that feedback correspondence to our SEAC package, which we would do and include in our minutes, which will then be public information unless you want it prior to the board meeting. But our intent is to include that correspondence. And then the second question is, we did not receive any feedback from any of the other associations in those two SEAC meetings with respect to the policy. And the information was received as information at the SEAC meeting.
So just a clarifying question, so that ABC feedback report will be provided in the minutes of, I guess, which meeting was that then?
The April
or
the April meeting.
Okay, so it's not, will that be on our board agenda next Tuesday?
No, it will not, because our next meeting for SEAC is May 31st, so it would be attached to that package.
Okay, so maybe it could be interesting for the other trustees to see that before our board meeting. And I have another follow-up question regarding the placements. I know that in this policy, it states that the board recognizes the necessity of providing a full range of placements, and then they are listed at the end of the policy. But I wondered, because in our education plan, if I remember, there's like a chart that shows what the placements are and whether we have them or not, and I wondered if that could be something we add to the policy, something like currently the following chart reflects what is provided at Halton Catholic District School Board.
Through you, Madam Chair, we did have some discussion.
Superintendent Balog, I just need to put you on pause for a procedural item. It's 10 o'clock. I apologize. Trustees, we need to take a vote on whether or not we extend. Can I have a motion to extend past 10 o'clock? 10 o'clock. Trustee Dewar, thank you. Seconded by?
Murphy.
Trustee Murphy, thank you. I'll take a recorded vote. Trustee DeRosa? Trustee DeRosa?
I stepped away, ma'am. Are we voting to extend?
Yes.
In favor.
Thank you. Trustee Dewar?
In favor.
Trustee Intomasi? I'm sorry, Trustee Intomasi?
Favor.
Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee Murphy?
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien?
In favor.
Trustee O'Hearn Charnota?
In favor.
Trustee Kelly?
In favor.
Trustee Goubert?
In favor.
Okay, sorry about that. Superintendent Ballo, please continue.
That's okay. So the question through you, Madam Chair, was about attaching or including the chart in the policy document. Again, we did have quite a bit of conversation about that at both of the SEAC meetings. And it was left that we would not include it as an appendix. Obviously, if it's the will of the board, but the rationale instead was to include a link to the plan in its entirety. Because in the plan, it goes on to explain the makeup of each of the classes, and it's more in context rather than just a chart that has some check marks on it. And we did add the link to the entire plan to the policy for that reason.
Okay, and is that under the references then? That's a link?
Yes. And I would also note that we do modify and review the plan on an annual basis. And that way, if there are any changes that are made to the plan, then the link is directly embedded in the policy.
Okay, thank you. And one more little follow-up question. There was another memo I was trying to find, and I wondered if the link could be put to that on here. It's under principles. It's the fourth bullet, the Ministry of Education for Ontario, the June 9th, 1994 memo. Is that still available, and could a link be provided for that?
1994 memo. Is it on the first page?
It's on page 2 of 4.
I don't know that I see it there. How far down is it?
It is under principles, the fifth bullet, the biggest paragraph.
So it says 1996, and we changed it to 1997. Is that the one that you're referencing?
No, the one underneath, and with direction from the Ministry of Education for Ontario, June 9th, 1994 memo.
Sure, and that seems very reasonable. So we can find the link or the memo and add the link.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Trustee DeRossi. Trustee DeRosa, are you still there?
Yep. Again, I have to step out. I'll get back to you. Skip over me.
Trustee DeRosa, you're not coming through.
Madam Chair, I have to.
Okay, I'm going to move on to Trustee Dewart, and then we'll come back to Trustee DeRosa. Trustee Dewart, you have the floor.
Yeah, Madam Chair, this is a related question to the policy here. This question to Superintendent Balog. We have gifted program till grade 8, and then we do not have anything in high school. So question here is why do we not have the gifted program beyond that? And is there a program that exists elsewhere?
Well, we don't have the program. It's not a continuous program that we have. We do have placement options 1, 2, and 3. We don't have a contained program. As I mentioned, there was a very extensive staff report that was created in 2019, and it did speak to a number of different pieces. I can certainly pull that. Including timetabling, including, it's not a huge population of students that we have at secondary that are identified gifted, and based on the classes that they're taking, we may not have enough students to even form one full class. And that's a big piece of it. And there are various course options that students select, and they may not all select the same class. And in terms of, are there other boards, did you ask, that have programs?
Yes.
Yeah, there are some boards that do have a congregated class, and they refer to it as well as like a clustered program.
Okay, that's what. Okay.
Do you have a follow-up, Stuart?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just wanted to clarify.
Okay, thank you. Trustee DeRosa, are you there?
Yes, I am. I just have a curiosity question. These streaming, So we're de-streaming grade 9 math. Is that correct?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong, but de-streaming has been tried before with no success. Am I under the wrong impression?
Maybe I can jump in for a second, Trustee DeRosa. De-stream math is really not a special education placement or a special education course. De-streaming of grade 9 was attempted for a couple of years, more than just grade 9 math. In the early 90s, the ministry after that decided to end that program, but the ministry is releasing the grade 9 de-stream math hopefully soon for implementation in September of next year.
So, may I have a follow-up, Madam Chair?
Yes, and thank you, Director Daly. I was going to comment that wasn't part of this this policy, but yes, go ahead, Trustee DeRosa.
So this is for either Superintendent Ballo or Director Daly. So we're proceeding with de-streaming. Are we going to affect the IB and the AP programs that we have currently? How is that going to play into it?
Through you, Madam Chair, I would defer on that.
Thanks, Stephanie. Through you, Madam Chair. So our plan, Trustee DeRosa, currently we have a pre-AP math and a pre-IB math. That's what we've been offering up until now. Next year, we'll be offering de-streamed math and locally developed math.
Trustee DeRosa, or does that answer your question, or do you need a clarifying comment?
No, I think so. I'm fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Trustee O'Brien, you have the floor.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. If we could just scroll down to the 11th bullet under requirements, please. And I don't mind reading it. Access to full or part-time special education class placement will be subject to the availability of space in receiving classes. Waitlist students will be ranked according to the date of the IPRC, which placed the student in the special education class. So, question to Superintendent Balloff. Then are there students who have on their IPRC or IEP from the IPRC that they are to be in a special class, but they will not get into that special class because of availability?
You're muted. Superintendent Ballo, you're muted.
Sorry about that. So through you, Madam Chair, we would go through an IPRC process to determine the appropriate placement. We do not currently, nor have we had, as far as I'm aware, of students who have been IPRC'd into a partially or fully contained class that remain on a wait list. So that would be part of the process, is to consult with the family and the school to determine the space in those classes.
So, just for clarification, Madam Chair, so are there gifted? So there are no gifted students that have a placement for that are refused because of availability?
Not at this time, and not that I'm aware of. I did have gifted programming for about 8 years in 2 different schools, and that was not an experience that I had. And we don't have that at this time. So we do have space, and part of the wait list and part of the locations is sometimes we do get new students who want to come into a program. We have also considered space in other locations because we do have locations in Oakville, Burlington, and in Milton.
So there are no secondary gifted students with a placement for on their IPRC or their IEP?
That's correct. All of our gifted students at secondary are either a placement 1, 2, or 3, and the majority are placement 1 and 2. There are very few students who are placement 3, which is withdrawal, because students, it may not necessarily work to be withdrawing a student from a class for resource support. They're already quite challenged with the curriculum that they're participating and engaging in.
So just to be clear on this, I'm not a special ed person. So placement is not part of the IPRC then?
It is. It's the P in IPRC. So it's Identification, Placement, and Review Committee.
But so it can change from grade 8 to 9?
That's right. And just like it changes from grade 4 to 5. So a student could have a placement 1, 2, or 3. And if they go into a self-contained class in grade 5, then that's why you hold an IPRC meeting so that you can change the placement.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Trustee Dewart, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is not regarding the policy, but it is very much germane to the discussion. Director Daly made a statement that next year, we are going to be moving away from grade 9 AP and moving into de-streamed math. So, Director Daly, could you provide I'm interested in that, the trustees, the difference between pre-AP math and the de-streamed math after the meeting or whatever?
Sorry, I didn't hear the last part of the question, Trustee Dewar.
Could you provide the trustees the difference between pre-AP math for grade 9 and the de-streamed math, which is going to come, which is going to be implemented? What's the difference between the two? Could that be provided to trustees?
I think Trustee Dewart, again, I think Director Daly already stated this, but this is not part of this policy.
Exactly, Madam Chair, I said that.
No, I know, but Trustee Dewart, I think we need to stay on track. It's 10:15 and we still have several other items, and I know it's on the board. It'll be addressed at the board meeting next week. So okay, I would ask.
I'll put a request. I'll put a request separately, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee DeRosa, you have a question?
Madam Chair, for Superintendent Bello, I'm just curious, how many gifted students are being affected by this? We talk about the numbers being low, but I'd like a sense if the actual numbers are available. Ballpark.
Through you, Madam Chair, when you say affected by this, do you mean secondary students who are not in a gifted program?
No, in a gifted program.
In a gifted program. Well, they're not in a placement 4 or 5 at secondary, so they would be in a placement 1 or 2, and there's very few that are placement 3.
Okay, so let me rephrase my question. I think what I want to know is how many gifted students are going into high school.
I can answer that for you. Based on the ONSIS information that I have from 2019-20 school year, because we haven't shared it yet for this year, we're just gathering it for the MESIAC meeting. There were 238 gifted students across the system.
Well, that seems like a big number to me. I have no basis for comparing that, but I didn't expect. I expected a much lower number. So 230 students is a lot of kids.
Yes, and I know I've mentioned this already, but we did have a very extensive report that was completed, and it involved a lot of really pertinent information. So if it's of interest, I mean, I'm certainly happy to recirculate that report, because it did break down at that time. It wasn't completed by myself, but it did break down at that time information that was also collected from families. There was a survey that was done. Our research was involved as well at that time.
I think that would be quite useful.
Okay.
I could make use of that. And I'm sure my other trustees can.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Trustee O'Brien, you have the floor.
Thank you through Madam Chair. Just kind of piggybacking on Trustee DeRosa's question. 234, I didn't know there were that many either. And I did read the report, Superintendent Balov, that came, it was a couple of years ago. But if you did offer a placement 4 somewhere in the board centrally located, like we do with an IB program for gifted students. I'm wondering if you would have more of an appetite for those students to go to it. I mean, it's kind of like when you go to the restaurant, if they don't offer your favorite meal, sure, you might have less of a demand for it, but if it's there, you might want it. I don't know, I just put that forward to you. 234, that seems like you could fill all 4 grades in high school. I know it's tricky around timetabling. Does the clustering model kind of aim for that kind of thing where you're giving the students maybe the option of a central location in the board, like you do with IB?
Through you, Madam Chair, the clustering model is embedded in the fact that students are remaining at their home school. I think, many students want to remain at their home school, and yet it still gives them the opportunity to be clustered or grouped with like-ability peers. A regional program is what it sounds like you're referring to, whereby a placement 4 would be offered to gifted students. I don't know that that's been explored per se. It sounds like a lot of students, but when you look at individual schools and across grades, you may have only a very small handful in each grade. And even in total, you may have, more students per grade, but you would need a healthy amount of students that would be interested. And also, in order for it to be a gifted placement, it has to be taught by a special education teacher. So part of the scheduling is that you would have to have staff that would have special education qualifications in order to teach those students, which I'm not sure is highly feasible either, especially if they're selecting different courses on their timetable. If we're calling it a placement 4, then the teacher does have to have that qualification, so they couldn't take a science class without a qualified spec ed teacher.
Madam Chair, if I could just follow up on that. I totally understand that, Superintendent Belov. I know the logistics would be very difficult, but do we not do that with IB already? I mean, aren't they special teachers as well? And if we do put forth a full rigorous secondary program with IB, would it not be kind of similar to that in the sense that, yes, you'd all have special education teachers, but if it was one central location like the IB, which I believe is at St. Thomas Aquinas, at a central location in the board, could it not be doable?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't know that I'm in a position to say whether it would be doable or not doable without having a very fulsome report, more information to be able to provide to the board to make such a decision. And I do believe a lot of those considerations were already taken and expressed in that report that came out.
And Madam Chair, if I just a final comment.
You know what, Trustee O'Brien, I'm going to ask that you go back into the feed because we have people who haven't spoken yet. Okay, sorry. Thank you.
No worries.
Director Daly, sorry, did you have a comment?
Just so I mean, trustees were talking about numbers. We do have over 13,000 secondary students in the board.
Thank you, Director Daly. Trustee Ian Tomasi, you haven't spoken to this. You have the floor.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Superintendent Bell. So if we're undergoing the de-streaming starting with grade 9, and we know that the difference between academic and applied is the speed at which math is delivered to students. Given that we're only going to have one type of math, what coping mechanisms are there going to be in place, or is the ministry putting in place to deal with the students that are going to be left behind?
Sorry, Trustee Tomasi, I don't know if you heard earlier, but the de-streaming in regards to the pre-AP math is not part of this policy. So we're trying to stay on track here. So do you have any questions in regards to this policy that has been presented?
I think my question does speak to the policy simply because the manner in which this policy is going to be delivered will take into effect what I've just said. or will speak to what I just said?
So
Can we let superintendent?
Pre-AP math is not a gifted program. It's open to
I
everybody.
didn't use the word gifted. I never used the word gifted.
This is the policy that we're dealing with right now, Trustee Antomasi. So I would ask that you keep your questions in line with the policy that we're dealing with.
Can we have Superintendent Bell make that decision based on the question that I asked, whether or not it pertains to this policy or not?
Trustee Antomasi, we've already had this, somebody else has already asked this question, very similar to yours, and it's not part of this policy. So we're going to ask that you ask another question, or we'll move on to the next trustee. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next trustee then. Trustee Carabella.
I'm going to withdraw my question. It's finished, it's answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Trustee O'Brien, did you have a subsequent question? I know you wanted to ask another question. Trustee O'Brien? Okay. Seeing that there's no further questions, thank you, Superintendent Ballo. We'll take this to a vote. Trustee Duart.
In favor.
Trustee Carabella.
In favor.
Trustee Murphy.
In favor.
Trustee Antomasi.
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien.
In favor.
Trustee O'Hearn-Janota.
In favor.
Trustee Kelly.
In favor.
Trustee Goubert.
In favor.
Trustee DeRosa.
Abstain.
I am also in favor. So the policy will be brought to the next board meeting. Moving on to item 4.5, policy II-40, bullying prevention and intervention. Can I have someone please move that policy committee recommends that policy II-40, bullying prevention and intervention, be forwarded along with amendments to the May 18th, 2021 regular board meeting for approval? Trustee DeWitt.
Seconded O'Brien.
Seconded by Trustee O'Brien. Thank you. And we have Superintendent Cordero. If you'd like to speak to this, please.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity tonight to present the action report for policy II-40, bullying prevention and intervention. Before I begin, I wish to acknowledge the leadership of Kathleen Morrill, the principal at Corpus Christi Catholic Secondary School and co-chair of our HCDSB policy working subgroup. As well, I wish to thank all stakeholders whose contributions were invaluable throughout the review. The purpose of this action report is to provide for the consideration of the policy committee revisions to policy II-40, bullying prevention and intervention. As points of commentary, the policy was reviewed in consultation with the policy working subgroup, which consisted of staff, CPIC and CAC representatives, students, and trustees. Clarifying language has been added to the purpose, application, and scope. Updates have been made to the definitions and requirements to provide additional and current language from the Education Act and relevant ministry documents. Policy II-40, bullying prevention and intervention, is attached for review and consideration by this policy committee. The following recommendation is presented for the consideration of the board. Principal Morrill and I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you. Trustees, I'll open up the floor for any questions. Trustee O'Brien, you have the floor.
Thank you, through Madam Chair. And Superintendent Cordero, as well as Kathleen Morrow, thanks so much for bringing this very important policy to the board. I'm very impressed with the work. I just have a few questions for you. It mentions the Halton Catholic District School Board's intervention plan. So I take it that the present committee you have will be formulating that plan. Is that correct?
There is a current plan that was last revised in December 2016. We will be reviewing that plan over the course of the summer and then striking a committee in the fall that will include many of the stakeholders previously mentioned and identified in the construction of this current review of policy II-40. So it may not include the same members, but it will certainly include the broad scope of staff and non-staff that was representative in the construction of the amendment of this particular policy.
Okay, and then follow up, Madam Chair. So then, Superintendent Cordero, will that plan be brought to the board for approval?
Yes, it will, and hopefully sometime in the fall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Superintendent Cordero.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Trustee DeRosa, you have the floor.
Superintendent Cordero, thank you very much for bringing this forward. My question might be a little premature, but I'll ask it anyways. I'm looking to see the actual practical implementation of this and who's going to be charged with doing it. Is this at the classroom level, the teacher level? Where's the degree of involvement in the frontline staff?
Once the policy is passed, we have been waiting for some time for the new policy and procedure memorandum, PPM 144, that has yet to come out. But the plan is to first provide training that will be mandatory for our school administrators, both elementary and secondary, principals and VPs, and then subsequently work through the broad range of staff within our schools, not necessarily exclusive to teachers, but support staff as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Trustee Carabella, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. And through you, Madam Chair, Superintendent Cordero just mentioned what I was going to ask. Is there any idea when the ministry will have that memorandum available?
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you, Trustee Carabella, for your question. We have been waiting for the PPM for the better part of a year. Obviously, the events of the pandemic and the current climate of circumstances has delayed the release of the PPM. As of now, I cannot speak to you with any assurity when that PPM will be released by the ministry. I would hope that we would have something before the commencement of school in September, but I cannot assure you of that.
And just as a further to that, Trustee Carabella, if you recall, when you and I brought this forward originally at policy, we were expecting the PPM at that point, and that was over a year ago. So if that gives you any idea of what the timeline looks like.
That's right. Thank you. Yeah.
Do you have a follow-up, Trustee Carabella?
No, thank you. It was a good policy. It was a good experience working with everyone, and it's so much more complete than it was. I'm very happy with it. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree, Trustee Carabella. It was, having CPIC and SEAC and everybody participate was great. Trustee O'Hearn-Zernota, you have the floor.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, to Superintendent Cordero. Just a very quick question in regards to Safe Schools team. It does say it's composed of at least one student, but in brackets where appropriate. Could you define what that bracket where appropriate means? What that means?
Really, it's more of a criteria that has to be set at the school level. in consultation with the student council, the Senate members, and the Catholic School Council to determine who would best fit that role. So that's sort of the reference that we were making in that respect. It's not by any means exclusionary of any one particular student or grade of student or profile of student, but it's more of a recognition that it's a site-based decision in consultation both with student councils and the Catholic School Council, and of course, the school admin and staff.
Thank you. Just to follow up, Madam Chair.
Trustee O'Hearn, do you have a follow-up question?
I do. Superintendent Cordero, just curious, like, I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around when would it be inappropriate?
Trustee O'Hearn?
Student representative.
Well, I don't know if it might be that, for example, a school may wish to have a senior student or perhaps students of a particular racial community or a particular profile as being the student selected in the process to sit on the school team. There are a variety of criteria that could be used. So most appropriate would be a determination made by the school. I don't believe there would be the selection of any student would be deemed inappropriate.
Thank you. I just respectfully request maybe look at the wording, because the way I read it is whether a student will even sit on the committee or not. But that could just be me.
What point is that at, Janet? Sorry, Trustee Hernota.
So it's under, it's what page is it on? It's on page 4 of 7. It's the second paragraph in bold. Safe Schools Team.
Yep, it's actually Safe Schools Team should actually, it's not that they should be on it, they are supposed to be on it. That is the Safe Schools Team, so it shouldn't read that they may be on it.
That's what confused me, where it says where appropriate in brackets. I didn't quite get that bracket portion.
And sorry, just procedurally, we need to do an extension, even though we have an action item on the table. So can I get a motion to extend?
Murphy.
Trustee Murphy, seconded by Trustee Dewart. I'll take a recorded vote. Trustee DeRosa.
I will take the lead from my fellow trustees. Come back to me if necessary.
Okay. Trustee Dewart.
In favor.
Trustee Antomasi.
I'm against, Madam Chair.
Opposed? Okay, so we will deal with the item that's on the table. We'll finish this up. Other than that, the rest of the business will remain. I guess on to the next policy meeting. So Trustee O'Hearn-Jornota, let's go back to that piece. So you're looking at where appropriate. So when we talked about this and we talked about Safe Schools Teams, part of that was that they should be in it and that there isn't necessarily an awareness on the Safe Schools Team. Not everybody is aware of what that means, but that there should be students on there. And I think the where appropriate as defined was what would be an appropriate student, and usually would be like more of a leadership within the school. So in elementary, you'd be looking at the older students. And obviously, I think with the Safe Schools Teams as well, if it's an issue that with dealing with confidentiality, I think that would be the only times where you would look at where appropriate.
Madam Chair, if I could add a point of clarification.
Sure. Correct me if that's not what we discussed, Superintendent.
No. That's very accurate. I just wanted to inform Trustee O'Hearn-Jornota that the language where appropriate is also consistent with the Ministry of Education's website, which outlines the membership of the Safe Schools Team, and the bracketing of that language where appropriate is directly taken from the ministry website in its definition of Safe School Teams.
Thank you, Superintendent Cordero. I'll send them an email and ask the same question. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Trustee Stewart, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you, Superintendent Cordero and Principal Morrow. I think very good job. I was part of this committee and I had to learn a lot. My question here is this. So we had this committee, okay, consisting of administrators and trustees and stakeholders. What about, did we talk to people at the grassroots, people in the schoolyard, people that actually walking the corridors in the school? Did we get feedback from them? Because that's where bullying happens. And I've seen that happen myself. And so did we talk to people who are there with the kids on the grassroots level?
Through you, Madam Chair, through you, Madam Chair, consultation in the committee included school chaplains who are very much tapped into students who experience, unfortunately, circumstances of bullying or inappropriate behaviors. The committee also included our mental health lead, social workers who were asked to consult with their colleagues in the schools, child and youth counselors, school administrators were asked to seek the advice or the counsel of their staffs, and that includes educational assistants and other members of the school community. So to say that, did we speak to the persons in the hallways? Perhaps not implicitly, but consultation was had and conversations were had with the various stakeholders in the schools. And let's also keep in mind that I believe each and all of our student trustees were a part of the conversation and were members of the committees that were struck that came to draft this policy.
Thank you. I think it's a very good change to the policy. And I just had a question because every time bullying happens, it happens at the grassroots level too. And we should be cognizant of that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Trustee Duart. Trustee O'Brien, you have the floor.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. And I thought Trustee Duart raised a good point. I think talking to the kids that have been victimized may be a good place to go too. Through you, Madam Chair, to Superintendent Cordero. Striking up this newer committee that you said in the summary, maybe you've answered this already. Are you open to having other trustees join that committee?
Well, we were going through you, Madam Chair. Principal Morrow and I were going to take some time during the summer to review the existing plan that the board has in place. We were going to offer some recommendations and then move towards striking a committee in the fall. The committee will likely include members of the Board of Trustees. To say how many, exactly who, that's something that we will work collectively towards at that point in time.
Thank you.
Do you have a follow-up, Trustee O'Brien?
Just my opinion. I think it might be good to put some of the other trustees on as well, just to give it a balance. But that's just my opinion, Madam Chair, to Superintendent Cordero. But I trust his judgment on that.
Thank you, Trustee O'Brien. And I think, though, if there is going to be a committee, that I believe that has to be done by the director and has to come through the board anyway. So if there's going to be any committee struck, that, you know, proper procedures will have to be followed. So
absolutely, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Right. So I think we'll all have the opportunity to participate in that. Should we wish to, Trustee O'Brien. So we'll wait to hear from Director Daly in regards to how that's going to roll out.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Superintendent Cordero.
Okay. Trustee Carabella, you have the floor.
Thank you, through Madam Chair, and to Superintendent Cordero. Just a clarification. So in the bullying intervention, it says it's a comprehensive and effective response to the bullying incident. And then later on, under requirements, it talks about when notifying parents of these incidents, the principal must invite parents to a discussion with them about the supports that will be provided for the child. And I'm just wondering then, when the plan is made, the bullying prevention plan, are those supports and effective responses listed in that plan? Is that part of the plan so that parents can know what to expect as a response to bullying, either the aggressor or the victim?
Much of the current policy that we've amended here tonight has been quite comprehensive, and I would anticipate that the same will be the case for the bullying prevention and intervention plan. So in short, yes.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you.
You're very welcome. If I could add, this is a requirement as per section 300.3 of the Education Act, and stated clearly in PPM 145 section 6. So we want to adhere to the legislation and to the ministry publications to.
Oh, looks like we lost you there, Superintendent Cordero.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, my apologies. Through you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to clarify that we have done an excellent job as a committee. A number of members have clearly pointed out the importance of aligning this policy and future plans with the Education Act and current PPMs, whether it be PPM 145 or 144 or 119. So we will continue that practice and ensure that any plan that moves forward with respect to bullying prevention intervention reflects that consistency.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up, Trustee Carabella?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any more questions in the feed, so we will take this to a vote. Trustee DeRosa.
I'm in favor, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Trustee Dewart.
In favor.
Trustee Antomasi.
In favor.
Trustee Carabella.
In favor.
Trustee Murphy.
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien.
In favor.
Trustee O'Hearn-Charlotta.
In favor.
Trustee Kelly. Did we lose you, Trustee Kelly? Trustee Goubert?
In favor.
I am also in favor. Trustee Kelly, if you're there, if you want to put in the chat box. You can't hear us. And just of note, this policy has been shared. The changes, the proposed changes that came tonight have also been shared with CPIC and SEAC, the representatives that participated in the committee, just so everybody is aware. And also, correct me if I'm wrong, Director Daly, but I believe this will go out for stakeholder feedback, correct?
That's a good question. I mean, there are some substantial changes to it.
I understood.
I think I have to think about that one a little bit.
Yeah, I understood that it was, but maybe we can clarify by next Tuesday, but I'm pretty sure it does go out for stakeholder feedback because of the changes.
Yeah, there's probably enough. I mean, typically a policy that's being reviewed doesn't need to, but we have made a lot of changes. So right. It would probably be helpful to get some additional feedback.
Okay, excellent. And thank you for allowing us to do this working committee, Director Daly. It was a great exercise. So that being said, it was decided that we would not go forward with any more on this agenda. So we are on closing prayer. So we have Trustee Carabella on closing prayer. If you could lead us, that'd be great.
Thank you. It's the month of May, and so we turn our hearts and our minds to Our Lady, and we will close with the Hail Mary. Hail Mary, full of grace, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Trustee Carabella, and thank you everybody for your participation tonight. Have a great rest of the evening.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Right.
Good night.